You know, at that point when I knew what had happened, that she was dead and that the daughter was dead, I just figured like that's what those last 2 shots were. It wasn't until I went in and visibly saw that, because I had a kid at the time. He was a year old. You know, who could do this to their own child, right? I love my kids to death.
Biggest accomplishment for the guys when I was there is we need to get to the basic academy, because that was the hard part, coming back and trying to teach 500 people from this department that hadn't have a body camera, but they're out there working in frontline positions.
I hear Rowden get on the radio, but the voice that came through that radio was not Rowden. I mean, just, you could tell the stress that was in his voice. And I'm like, what the hell is going on, right? Like, he doesn't ever sound like this. And that's when I looked up the call, see what he was on. And I'm like, oh, okay, so this is probably a legitimate deal. Somebody did get kidnapped, and they're getting into some stuff right now.
Again, a lieutenant, newly promoted, and you're working under the best chief of police that this entire country has seen. And I get that front row seat, and I don't take advantage of that. It's hard to explain because you guys only see what's on TV, and then I get, oh man, that was great. And I'm like, it was great, but that's like not even half of what I get to experience on a daily basis.
You're listening to the ATO Bridging the Divide podcast, brought to you by the Assist the Officer Foundation.
Since 1999, the ATO has given assistance to the first responder community. And now we want to give them a platform to hear their incredible stories.
We also want to hear the stories of the many people that support us.
Our community is small, but it is strong.
We have differences. We don't always agree. And we all make mistakes.
But together we can grow, we can heal.
And we can learn from those mistakes.
And together we can bridge the divide.
Apollo and Artemis, twins born of Leto and Zeus. They were the divine archers of Greek mythology. They were similar in many ways, but also very different. They both had a love for archery and the hunt. They were equal, highly revered, and often chose youthful forms to express themselves. However, they were very opposite of one another. Apollo represented the sun and day, whereas Artemis' domain was the night and everything he could touch by moonlight. The divine twins were effectively two sides of the same coin, inseparable yet different. One without the other was inconceivable. Welcome back, ATO supporters. I'm Joe King. Today I'm with my guest co-host, Sergeant Kent Wolverton. And today we're sitting down with our identical twins on the department, live from the 305 Miami. Both hiring on in 2007. They sat in the same academy class, but like Artemis and Apollo, they both took different paths in their careers. Both paths led to success. This is their story of family, struggle, success, and leadership. I'd like to welcome to the ATO stage the Candelaria twins, Bryan and Gabe. Guys, thank y'all for coming on and sitting with us. I know you are so busy, especially you, Gabe, being the big boss's body double. Is that what we're going with?
Right. Or my father. Yeah.
The more successful of the two.
Well, I'd heard, I hadn't seen it, that somebody did like the Dr. Evil and the mini-me picture.
Yeah, it's in my parking space. Yeah.
That's nice. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so for the listeners, we're having on identical twins, and both these guys, they are identical. The only way I can separate them right now is by their uniform. One's a lieutenant and the other's a sergeant. I've known them both my entire career. I've known Bryan, the sergeant, longer. We actually worked together for a long time, and genuinely great people. I think it starts with that, just being good people.
Thank you.
Loyal friends. And just, it means a lot for y'all to be on this, come out and take your time to do the show, but also be incredible friend to me. Just want y'all to know, to get that out of the way, because we're about to roast the hell out of y'all.
Yeah. So I figured.
In fact, to just lay the ground rules, if I can, Bryan, the entire interview, you're supposed to speak in the Ali G accent.
Booyakasha. Respect.
And Gabriel, you are going to use a Scottish accent, so we can tell the difference.
Yeah.
All right.
You good with that?
I'm trying to think about how to do that.
That was horrible if you were doing it right there.
Yeah. Wow.
You really got to work at that.
Yeah. What's his name?
Sean Connery.
Yeah. Mike Myers is
British.
Mike Myers is rolling over in his grave hearing that. Well, he's not dead. No, he's did the Shrek voice, the Scottish.
Yeah.
You can do that?
Yeah, just do Shrek.
Yeah, do the Shrek voice.
I can do the donkey. Hey, Shrek. Hey.
Oh my God. Okay, we'll do that.
That was horrible.
No. So the reason I do it, because y'all sound alike, right? So let's say I just got in the car and I'm doing a search on podcast and I'm going, okay, true crime, nonprofit section. What is this? ATL Bridging the Divide. Okay, let me check this shit out. Oh, Candelaria twins.
I can go Barry White.
Okay, well,
Really
Sergeant Barry White so they're not gonna be able to tell the difference.
Right.
So on some of these, I'm gonna have to say Gabe, blah blah blah, and Bryan, and go with that. But
Great plug too, by the way, finding the website or the podcast.
hey, I'm
I'm
getting better at this.
No, you killed that one.
Yeah,
Very nice.
I have my moments. All right. First off, I want to say that Lieutenant Gabriel Candelaria, you are the lieutenant for who?
Chief Eddie Garcia for the Dallas Police Department.
Well, yeah, and for the listener, that is the top chief, and
Yes.
and all the stresses that go along with working for the big chief. Chief Garcia actually is on an earlier episode, episode 17, I believe. But he's also Puerto Rican.
Yes.
And
yes.
and we do all the social media teasers, and then when I put this out there, it's going to be blasted, and everybody's going to see the photos, and they're going to see a resemblance.
All
It's
right.
like a cross between Chief Garcia and Pitbull. So yeah,
Dale.
hey, it could be worse. You could be
Dale.
yeah. Then we have Sergeant Bryan Candelaria, and we work together on the CRT. We're going to get to that point of when we get there, but we're going to have a beginning and we're going to have an end, right, or a quasi end, because it still ain't the end for you guys. But you all ready to get into it?
Yeah,
Are
absolutely.
ready,
Can't wait.
Ready to dive into this?
Did you notice they did that in unison?
Yeah.
You'll probably get that a lot
Yeah.
today.
It
You're probably
happens.
going to get that a lot.
They're literally dressed alike except the damn on their collar. One got a lieutenant and the other has nothing. It's,
Well, they
Yeah.
are both wearing
You
a
got the
uniform,
chevron.
so that
Yeah.
kind
Catching
of goes.
up.
All right. I want y'all to talk about growing up in Florida, what home life was, and just tell the listener about that.
I guess I'll start. So, a lot of people don't really know, but we're born in some very small town in Central Florida, and didn't last long until my mom divorced my dad. But then we moved to Miami, and that's where we grew up. That's where we got the pit bull lifestyle and the melting pot of Cuban, Puerto Rican, and really all Hispanics for the most part, all down in Miami. So that's where we grew up.
Now, do you actually say Miami?
Miami.
There you go.
Yeah.
Go, you listen again.
God.
Don't whitewash it for us.
Yeah, I'm
Let's
sorry.
just
Again.
lay it on there.
Trying to be professional too, right?
Oh, yeah,
No,
he is
hey.
a lieutenant and for the chief, but we're in a
I'll
safe
loosen
space.
up.
Hey, Gabe, nobody listens to this anyway.
Yeah, right.
So
Yeah.
nobody's going to hear this.
You can roll your R's.
Yeah.
It's fine.
But no, so we grew up in Miami. My mom remarried when we were down there. I think when we were like 3 years old.
Yeah.
And she married a Miami-Dade police officer, Cuban guy, Omar, and he was a Miami-Dade police officer. He did 25 years there. He did all you can think about in Miami. So we grew up with that. My mom was really a stay-at-home mom. She's Puerto Rican. She did at the end of our lifetime in Miami. She was a background investigator from Miami-Dade. She did that for 5-6 years, something like that.
Yeah, quite a bit. I can remember. Yeah, she was there for a while. Miami-Dade.
And, and everybody's like, oh, how's it growing up as twins and all that? And, we went to the same schools. We dressed alike for the most part. That all those things that
you still are.
Yeah, right. For the most part, yeah. I mean, everything that you think about. I mean, think about it. You have 2 kids born at the same time. We had a lot of hand-me-downs, so we all had pretty much the same clothes, shopped at the same places. But it's interesting.
Abercrombie and Fitch.
Yeah.
I knew
He
it.
actually
I
worked there.
I freaking knew it.
I worked there as a loss
See
prevention.
modeling those clothes.
Yeah. No shirt.
No shirt.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It was great.
And it's funny because we, with school, you're kind of forced to live that kind of same lifestyle just because you got to go to the same school. We live in the same house. But then as we became adults, we kind of still found the same paths of careers. We both went into loss prevention. He was at one Macy's. I was at a different one. Then I went to that Macy's. And that's when.
Did you ever cover his shift? Like he couldn't make it. Like you showed up and said you were him.
No, because we were in school at the time, college full time and work full time. So we couldn't. Our schedules were so different as far as what times we were going to classes and what time work was. But high school we kind of switched a little bit.
The thoughts crossed your mind.
We did that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, in school, did you ever do any kind of?
We did a couple
Trickery.
times where we switched classes. So what's crazy is the high school we went to
Gabe's shaking his head. No,
was an all magnet school.
All disgusted.
So we had to attend actually some of the classes together. So we didn't have a choice because we were in the same magnet program. But some of our regular courses, like our Englishes, our Spanish, and our maths and all that, we would switch just periodically. It wasn't a frequent thing, but they would notice. The teacher would realize all right, Gabriel's not acting right.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say, let's get into that one because I remember that one.
I want to hear
Gabriel's
this.
not acting right. He's sleeping during class. He doesn't do this. He's usually paying attention. And
Something's going on at home.
right.
The detail is, so we had switched that English class, and I don't really remember the other times. We know it happened, but I get to class. I guess the one day the one day he switched with me, he was in my classroom. So I go the next day to that class. And he's like, hey, Gabriel, let me see you after class. I'm like, sure, no problem. So then I go up to him, and I was a good student, had a really good GPA. And he goes, are you okay? Is something going on with you? And I go, no, why? And he goes, man, you were sleeping the whole class last time. And I was like, this guy over here, man, just did it to me, man.
And that's just one story.
Yeah.
I feel bad now, but I kind of screwed him over once in high school pretty bad.
But I said,
you can't leave the teaser on here.
Nobody listens to this, so go ahead.
So
you're in a safe space.
We had,
except for the
in
girl
our
you're
magnet
about to
course,
talk about.
we were in music, and so we were taking a course in I think it was piano or keyboard.
Oh, keyboard. Okay.
Well,
Casio,
a Casio. You would actually have to write music and do stuff like that. And so I think it was our final exam or our midterm.
It was a midterm.
Our midterm exam was up. High school for me was just kind of just going through the motions. I wasn't really
sleeping
right.
in class.
Yeah.
Right.
So I didn't really take it too serious.
It was for me too. So don't feel bad.
And so the objective for the midterm was to create and compose a song or whatever you wanted. It could be hip hop, it could be classical, it could be whatever you wanted. Well, I was screwing around during the whole class, and there's 10 minutes left, and I have to turn in something for a midterm.
Here we go.
Gabe had already turned in his composition sheet with his music on it.
Sorry. I didn't
And this is a magnet school, so let's break this down. This is not just writing one note, two notes, and writing, row your boat. This is multiple layers of music notes, right? And
I look at the teacher's tray and I see Gabriel had turned in his sheet. So I took it to my desk and literally plagiarized everything he had. And then I put my name on top of the paper as well. And when I turned it in, I placed mine on top and Gabriel's on the bottom.
Oh, man.
And so when the teacher, how did it go? The teacher read.
Everything was normal, right? And then when my report card came out, I got an F.
I got an A.
And he got an A. And I'm like, okay. So I went up to the teacher and I was like, hey, how did I get an F? I mean, surely I didn't get an A, but I don't think I deserved an F. And you're dying over here because
Yeah.
So then he goes, you plagiarized, and he's showing me Bryan's and mine, and I go, I wrote that. I mean, that's my song. That's what I did. And so then I had to confront him during lunch.
Yeah, he confronted me.
Had a duel. Had a duel.
Yeah, he was pretty pissed, and so I felt bad. And
you should.
Yeah.
Then you felt bad after you got caught. That's all. Really, okay.
And then so I told
All right.
I told the teacher, what I did. I plagiarized him. And so he ended up. He didn't fail me actually for the midterm. I think he ended up giving me like a C and gave you the A.
Yeah.
So
was nice of him.
Yeah.
So for clarification, because this is only sound, these guys are basically the Island Boys.
I'm an island boy. This is a gang.
Gabe's like, he's like squirming in his chair.
We are the
all
real Island
loose.
Boys.
Yeah,
I don't care what those guys have.
Brian's cheating on tests and sleeping in class, and
right.
Gabe's over here all.
He's your typical island boy, while I'm here trying to make it.
I made it.
No, hey, both of y'all made it.
Yeah.
Hey, in y'all's intro, I referenced Artemis and Apollo, the Greek archers, and the twins. And y'all haven't heard that yet, because any listener that knows that, they know that I'm sneaky and I fumble through the words, so I have to most of the time get the intro out before y'all sit down. So this is gonna be a nice little surprise for y'all.
There's a lot of crying involved.
Yeah,
too.
there's a lot of crying.
It gets emotional.
It took me like 10 times to get it. Yeah.
Really?
See, I don't even know if you're being
like,
sarcastic.
Okay.
No. See how good of a liar I am?
Yeah, you're good. You're really good.
So just again for clarification, you both shave your head now, right? So
Yeah.
you look very, very similar. Did you have similar haircuts growing up?
Well,
go ahead.
Yeah, growing up, I would say, when we were younger, as we got older, high school and stuff like that, we kind of started taking on our own personalities. Still a lot of similar things, same likings and sports. But even in high school, I kind of started finding a different path in sports. Gabe kind of tried out a couple things that were new, like swimming. I did the track and field and the cross country.
Synchronized swimming?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
No.
Yes, synchronized.
Yeah, all right. I'm sorry.
Because growing up,
paint the picture for the listener.
yeah, growing up, we played soccer since we were 5 years old together, same team, all the way pretty much through high school.
Yeah, we were good.
And I think that in high school we realized like the kids were really good in high school and we just weren't at that level. So it was kind of starting to look at different directions as far as sports, and somehow or another,
No basketball.
I tried out once for a middle school team. I did. I didn't make it.
The cool thing is in Miami, everybody's short. So, I mean, we had the advantage.
Yeah, but we were really short.
Yeah, but you're quick though. I've seen Bryan in action. He's quick.
Yeah, and I think that finding that in high school, that I was like, I'm pretty good at track, and I found that I was pretty decent at the 800 and the mile run, and then cross country. All that was new, but then I was actually pretty good in cross country. So I'm running 5Ks, and
He recruited me to cross country my senior year.
that's right.
Yeah.
Oh, you
so
ran it?
I'd never done.
You just started your senior year and ran that?
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I mean, with soccer, soccer's a
You're
running
in shape,
sport,
yeah.
right?
You're in
So,
shape.
and then I did do that one season in swimming, and it wasn't for me. I mean, I did swimming when I was young, and it wasn't bad, but just wasn't for me. And then he recruited me to go and try it out, and sure enough, I mean, if anybody knows the cross country sport in high school, you're really trying to get your first 5 to the finish line because it's all combined times, right? Like that's how you beat the schools or the other teams. And so I made my way from like 8th on the team, and then all the way to the 5th or 4th runner sometimes. And so that's when I started to pick up and run 5Ks on my own and stuff like that, and did track. But he actually recruited me to cross country.
Yeah, and then just trying to go back on the question that you originally asked about growing up in Florida, to just add a little bit more context to it. Like Gabe said, our parents did meet in Orlando, Florida. They were both Orlando police officers. That's where they met and got married. And then shortly after their marriage, they divorced. Just wasn't working out. My mom moved back to Miami, where she wasn't born there. She was born on the island, but her family, my grandparents and her and my aunt moved to Miami after Puerto Rico. So she went back to Miami. That's where she met my father. She was a Miami Gardens police officer for a little while when she moved back. And then she kind of, like Gabe said, was a stay-at-home mom.
And you said your stepdad was Miami Metro-Dade?
Yeah,
Yes.
and so going forward, I know that he'll probably be brought up quite a bit on this podcast, my stepdad. So
I met him on the ride-along here.
Right,
Mhm.
and I consider him, and I think we both consider him to be our father. We have our biological
Correct.
father, which he does what he can, but my stepfather, who I consider my father, is who brought us up.
That's
right?
good. Y'all have that relationship because there's so many kids. I mean, hell, I had my own experiences growing up. There's so many people that don't get that.
Right.
Yeah. From a step parent.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you look at it, when I look at it now, we were extremely lucky to have such a father figure. You know,
because he had a great career and had his shit together, and he was respected.
I'll be frank; it's the reason why we're here today as cops.
Absolutely,
I mean, we idolized him for that.
Absolutely,
I mean, we were very proud growing up. We always wore his T-shirts, and he bought his kids shirts that always said Miami-Dade Police, and we rocked it when he came home and he saw him in uniform. It was awesome. I mean, we all have kids. It's the same way when we get home. My son sees me in uniform; he lights up, and so, we had that same reaction. So. At least for me, and I won't speak to about Bryan, but I always, because of him, wanted to be a cop. Always.
Brian's gonna steal your shit anyway.
That's right.
It's like he did in high school.
He's like, yeah, me too.
Yeah. What he said. No. So your stepfather, Metro-Dade, for the listener, that was what time frame was he on in there?
So
80s.
He got hired in the 80s.
Cocaine Cowboys era.
Yeah. And it's crazy. Some of the stories he'll tell you about the hiring process. In Miami at the time, because there was so much cocaine coming through the city.
Yeah. The listener, if they want to see a great documentary, it's been out for a long time. It's Cocaine Cowboys, and it's one of the best documentaries. But so in Miami was originally the kind of retirement community, and then it went from maybe having at the most 100, 120 murders in a year to 500 plus in a matter of. It's a matter of like time. Yeah.
So, my dad would talk about, the hiring process back then. And because there was so much cocaine coming through Miami at the time, I think what he said was at one point the department was requiring that you couldn't have used cocaine at all to apply. And then they weren't getting enough applicants. And so then they shortened it, said, okay, well, if you didn't use cocaine within the year, you could apply. Then they lowered it to a month. Then they lowered it to a week.
Oh, wow.
And then they lowered it to that day.
No. If within 24 hours you have not snorted cocaine. Right.
And I mean, that's just how much and how new cocaine was to pretty much not just Miami, but to the United States.
The drugs are coming up. Basically, Florida was a hub. It would come in, Colombia, right? And it would come into Florida, and Miami was the big city, and basically just distribute out to the country.
Correct. Yep. Yeah, it was crazy.
In New York, New Yorkers were getting their cocaine from the Florida area.
Yeah, and it just perspective-wise, we didn't grow up. We were born in the 80s, but we don't remember too much of that craziness. But growing up and even going through college, there was drugs everywhere.
Mm-hmm. Other than cocaine, what was the
ecstasy?
Ecstasy, yeah, it's a party drug. I mean, Miami's a party. That's a party town in the city
all day.
You could go anywhere, and people were offering
pretty much whatever you wanted.
Yeah, heroin wasn't a thing. I didn't know about heroin until really I moved here.
Yeah, CRT days.
Right, and then basically, we'll talk about that. But even meth, we didn't know what meth was, or none of that. We knew ecstasy, but we didn't correlate MDMA with methamphetamine, crystal meth and ecstasy.
In y'all's high school, did it start getting kind of rampant, the use of drugs in high school?
I think, so my mom did a pretty good job of making sure that she helped guide us in the proper direction. Where we grew up in West Kendall, not a bad part of town at all. But according to, I think, Alex Rodriguez, it's the hood.
Oh, well, that's right. There's a lot of places that are hood to him.
But it's not hood. I mean, it's got its problems, but it's not hood.
It's like Garland, Texas.
Maybe.
Kind-ish,
I mean, it's got like really nice spots, and then there's problem areas and stuff like that. But a lot of officers had, lived in West Kendall. So, I mean, it wasn't a bad place. But there's drugs everywhere, and the exposure's everywhere. And so my mom knew that our home school at the time, which was Braddock High School, wasn't probably the best place to go to high school, just because of all the influences in the neighborhoods and the kids that were growing up there. So she did everything she could to make sure we were going to go to a good high school. And we applied to several magnet programs at different high schools all over the city and county. And we got accepted to Coral Reef, which is an all magnet school. and that kind of geared us. And so Coral Reef, our high school, wasn't, because everybody there is in a magnet program. It's kind of like having your own major. You can be in business, medical, criminal justice, music. I mean, you can do almost anything. And there's such a focus in education at that school that it's really hard to kind of really bring in such bad players. I mean, we did have problems, and we had some bad actors every once in a while, but probably nothing compared to what regular public high schools had in Miami.
You had magnet school gangsters.
They tried.
They tried.
They tried. But no, I mean, my high school years, I loved it. It was fun. We really didn't have many problems. So, we got lucky in that aspect.
Got to sleep in class. And
right? Yeah.
Like a hammock in the corner.
Brother,
So, growing up, y'all, you said the biggest influence to get you on law enforcement was your stepfather, how much y'all wanted to emulate him as a person and a professional.
Absolutely.
So,
and let me touch on that, because I know Gabe spoke about it, and I'll say 100%, and everybody that knows me knows that I idolized my father. I mean, I can remember being a kid and seeing him in that shitty brown uniform, that Miami-Dade uniform, and saying, I want to be that,
Why? What about that uniform spoke to you?
It's just the way he carried himself wearing it, and the level of, I don't know, just like the command that I guess he brought with it, and how he walked with it, and everything about the way he was in that uniform, I wanted to be. And
what it represented.
What it represented, right? And then moving forward a little bit, not just him wearing that uniform, but everything he did, he was amazing at. If he was in SWAT, he was great. If he was in narcotics, undercover, he was great. If he was in robberies, homicide, public corruption, everything that man touched, he was great at. And everybody in the city and the county knew who Omar Carrillo was. Mm-hmm. Everybody.
100%.
Even when he retired and stuff went down, they called him.
Omar coming.
Omar coming. Yeah, Omar. On the wire.
Yeah. Exactly.
So he was a legend in that department.
Yeah,
in
my eyes,
in that community.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I wanted, and Gabe knows this, my nature is I'm super competitive, right? And sometimes right, I'm super competitive, and I wanted to be everything he was and better. I wanted that for myself. And so I knew at a very young age that there was nothing you were going to make me do, but I was going to be, and at the time, in my mind, I was going to be a Miami-Dade cop.
Yeah.
That's going into my next question. What y'all decided, you knew all along y'all wanted to get into that profession, right?
Absolutely.
Did both of y'all have that same feeling? I know what you just Really?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, for the same reasons? Gabe,
absolutely, 100%. My dad, like I said, I think the drive for him is different. Obviously, this is where the twin separation comes in.
Okay.
I think mine was more of the aesthetics too, right? Not only did I idolize him, but it was cool. You got my dad, and back then, even in the early 90s, he still had that box Metro, and it said Metro-Dade before they transitioned to Miami-Dade Police Department. So it was cool to see that green and white car pull up, and him in uniform. His stories always interested me, right? He would curse a lot. So we're sitting at a dinner table. We knew our place. Just listen, don't repeat.
Yeah.
And
that's how Carmen is now with
right.
me. Yeah.
So we go back to having the kids, and my son's always asking questions. I'm like, we don't ask questions. If you're going to sit here and listen, you listen. And so, that just was such a cool lifestyle, I thought, for me. And outside of the idolizing him, part two is like, man, I want to be a cop.
Electric Boogaloo.
Yeah, part two, Electric Boogaloo. Yeah. Danny is punching the screen right now, hearing this.
Yeah, we're gonna keep it.
Yeah, I'm leaving it in.
Okay,
yeah. And we may have y'all back for a part two, the Candelaria twin part two, Electric Boogaloo.
Let's do
Once
it.
Gabe becomes chief, and you're still going to be the admit sergeant for Chief Candelaria, Gabe Candelaria.
No,
look on his face.
He might steal his uniform and start running the shop wherever he's at.
Honestly, nobody knows.
Why is Chief Candelaria sleeping on duty?
Somebody's going to pull you to a side and go, Chief, are you okay?
Right,
yeah, exactly.
You look a little bigger today.
Yes,
What's going on?
Wow.
Damn. Your tries are they got massive overnight. What are you?
Yeah.
What are you on?
Yeah, the higher you go up, the less you work out.
I think that's actually not true.
I'm kidding.
Hey, I stayed at the bottom. Look at me.
Yeah.
I'm kidding.
Exactly.
I'm kidding.
Oh, look at Chief Garcia.
Yeah, look at you.
Yeah,
He's
there's
all
no
jacked.
excuse, yeah.
He's all
Wait,
jacked.
did you just say Chief Garcia doesn't work out?
No, not at all. He's
Whoa,
actually
it sounded like it.
Shout out Gabe for
Yeah.
saying Chief Garcia is a slacker on the Peloton.
I think anybody sees him in a T-shirt knows better.
Yeah.
Right.
So you wanted to be a Miami-Dade officer.
Oh, yeah.
Where did that? What changed with both of y'all?
Yeah. So, and it's the same, pretty much the same story. And Gabe will talk about how he kind of came over here and stuff like that. So when my dad retired, he retired in January of 07.
06. It was 06.
2007. I moved here in December of 06. We got hired in November of 07. So he retired in January of 07.
Okay.
You want to arm wrestle about it?
No, it's fine. I mean, this is the conversations we have all the time.
How about a leg wrestling? Like
That's right. Yes.
shirtless
No,
leg
so
wrestling. Get on the floor and we'll
we were
get now with the
we were
butts.
in college at the time at Florida International University. We were going to school full time, work full time. Again, I knew that once I was done with school, I was going to Miami-Dade, and there was nothing anybody could do about it. We knew everybody. My dad had all the connections, right? So
Hadn't used cocaine in a day.
right? 24-hour went by, I was good, right?
That's so crazy.
Just FYI, that had changed, right?
I'm sure that, and for the listener, that is not Dallas PD's policy either. So.
Oh, yeah, no.
So at the time of his retirement, my parents were going through some marital issues, some pretty severe marital issues. So, and for people that don't know, Miami's full of distractions, full of it. Whether it's party lifestyle, women, everything. I mean, it's just there's so much going on.
Bible study.
Yeah, exactly. Right, Bible study. No, and so it looking at it, it's hard to raise a family. It really is. There's too much going on. There's way too many distractions. There's way too many people that are trying to scam you and do a bunch of things there. It's not everybody in Miami. And I love Miami, so I'm not gonna.
Of course, yeah, but it
is what it is sometimes. But so their decision was after his retirement, they were gonna move somewhere else. And they looked at a few places around the country, and it was decided that they came here to visit my aunt, and she was living in Allen, Texas. Her job in Miami had transferred her here years before.
Allen was probably nothing at that point.
No,
it wasn't.
Tiny.
And so they came out here and they fell in love and put an offer on a house and got a house out here. So me being in college, I couldn't afford to stay in Miami by myself. And so I decided, I was like, well, what I'll do is I'll move to Texas, get a job, and at some point I'm going to apply back to Miami-Dade without finishing school. And so I get here, I register for college part-time because I couldn't afford the out-of-state tuition. And I started putting my application in with Miami-Dade and the city. And that was around the springtime of 07. And we hit a recession down there. It was the beginning of the recession, at least in South Florida, because they went on a hiring freeze. So I was like, okay, so what am I going to do? I'm 21 years old. At that time, I'm thinking like, I'm getting older. I'm not starting my career. I need to start jump-starting this. Well, why don't I apply for some departments out here? And once Miami-Dade lifts their hiring freeze, then I can just go back down there. So I put in my applications with like Allen PD, McKinney, and Richardson. And so, because that's all I knew. That's where I was living at the time. I was living in Allen.
You were aware of Dallas, though. Yeah.
But I don't even think at the time that I've ever visited the city.
Okay.
I didn't want to be
But
here.
you've heard of it.
I did.
And you're a Cowboy fan.
I'm a diehard Cowboys fan, right?
Okay.
But I didn't want to be here in Texas. It wasn't, again, now my vision of what I'm supposed to do and where I'm supposed to go has been altered.
You decided to use the North Texas just to kind of a placeholder until you got back to
Right.
Okay.
Because I felt
Miami.
like I didn't have a choice at this point. Like,
Yeah.
Because of the dynamics of the situation and the affordability of being in Miami working full time but making $8 an hour, I couldn't live there. So what can I do in between the time that I'm here to get back to Miami and to be a Miami-Dade cop? So and that's when I figured I'll just apply with some departments that I'm familiar with out here for that I've been here a couple months, so I know Allen and the Collin County area. And so I put in, and, the process was very slow up there. And while attending class one day at Collin Community College, a buddy of mine he's my friend now, Anthony Sharetta, I think he's at Prince George County or George Prince County, over by Baltimore, Maryland area.
Oh, good.
That's Chief Aziz, right?
Yeah, that's
he's
where
up
Chief
there.
Aziz is at right now. He came up to me after class and said, hey, you should consider putting in for Dallas. They've big city. They have so much opportunity, and they got a $10,000 hiring bonus.
Yeah.
That's right.
So I looked into it, went online as soon as I got home, and I read 3,000 plus officers. That's pretty comparable to Miami-Dade. That's a pretty big department. And the opportunities were pretty much endless, it looked like. So I put in.
Dale.
And actually the process, and thank God for, Detective Thomas Popkins, but the process was quick and easy compared to the other departments.
So, Gabe, did you just copy his homework on that one?
No, I did not. I had a different route. So, just like Bryan said about a history with our parents.
Y'all really are Artemis and Apollo.
Right?
I love it.
No, so, at the time when they made the decision to move, I had talked with my mom. And, at the time I was just like Bryan, going to school full time at FIU. And then I was actually dating my wife, too, at the time.
What's her name?
Melissa Candelaria. So, we were dating and I was kind of living my life too, right? I'm 21, 20 years old.
Right.
I saw the spiky hair of y'all.
Man.
Yeah, and they'll be posting some of those.
Just
Man, if
salsa
I had-
dancing.
if
Yeah.
I had my hair back
It had the
again.
Jersey Shore, the what is it?
Little frozen
The
tits.
situation hair.
It was the
Yeah.
Island Boys, to be honest.
Yeah, we're the Island Boys. I'm telling you, we're the
100%.
original Island Boys.
No, so, we talked about it and I just, I was being honest. I said, I want to stay. I was a junior at FIU and I was dating Melissa, and I guess by the grace of God, my mom kind of blessed me at the time too to stay. So we did. And I stayed with my grandparents, and then, but shortly after they moved, my parents brought them to Dallas, the Dallas area. And then, I stayed at my parents' condo where my grandparents were living. And then with a combination of, not that we were broke by any means of the stretch, but just, just to Bryan's point, which was we're not making that much money. My wife was actually, she was fine because she was going to UM. She was about to get her degree. And, I approached her one day and said, hey, I'm getting kind of homesick too. I want to go. And luckily she reached out to UM and they actually sponsored her on her last, I think she had 2 semesters left, and they sponsored her to go to UNT. And so, man, that was a blessing in disguise, because I don't think she ever would have came if she wasn't going to be able to graduate through the University of Miami. So then we moved, and I applied here for, I think it was Sears loss prevention supervisor. It was an okay job. It wasn't bad, not knocking Sears. Ran into the same problem Bryan did. I didn't ignorant because I was young and dumb, but I was an out-of-state student at this point, and I'm like, well, I have my state driver's license. How am I out of state? But so now I had a reset, and then the curriculum here in Texas is you got to take Texas history and U.S. history and all this stuff, and
Learn about the Alamo.
That's right.
Yeah, absolutely. And so then now I'm behind almost a year and a half, 2 years in school, and same thing. I kind of felt like, well, I'm kind of stuck. I'm not loving my job at Sears. Bryan was already going through the background with Dallas. And so I'm like, you know what? Let me do that too. With the caveat that my mom had told me that if you apply to a police department, get hired, you automatically become a state resident,
Right.
too. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. So I put my application in to the same places, McKinney, Richardson, Allen, and
You waited on Dallas.
I waited on Dallas.
Yeah.
And also, and I'll jump on this, is there was like a culture of like, man, be careful with Dallas, right? And I think you guys were just going through the drug scandal at the time too, maybe, or something. There's always some controversy with Dallas PD, right?
It's cyclical, yeah.
Right. So, they're like, oh, you got to be careful. And I was like, okay, cool. So I'll just stay to the Collin County area. No problem. And I actually went all the way through Richardson. And some point in my background with Richardson, I put in my application with Dallas. And I know I got hired by Richardson. I remember getting called in and getting the offer. And they only had 2 positions.
Wow.
Yeah. And so with the hundreds of applicants, I was one of the 2 that actually got the job offer. And, just the dynamics there at the time, especially in 2007, they were a lot smaller than what they are today as far as even population wise. And I was like, yeah, no, thanks. I appreciate it. But I was like, I can't do the small mentality police department. And so I put my prayers together and just left DPD to see if they would hire me. And
Bryan was in the middle of it process, right?
Yeah, and it got you closer towards the end.
Yeah.
Because he got hired as a pre-hire, and I know at some point Detective Tom Popkins picked up my application or my background, and I felt like overnight it was done, but it obviously wasn't. But
It was basically the same person he already looked at.
right,
So he just
same references, same
right.
parents, so it was easy for him.
Done this already.
Yeah.
Shout out to Tom. Tom loves this podcast. And he's gonna
He's a
enjoy
great
this.
guy.
Yeah, he is.
Great guy.
Great guy to Tom because he's a wonderful guy.
Good dude.
No, so I think like 2 days before, because he had already got his academy assignment. 2 days before his academy, I got the phone call from Tom saying, "Hey, you ready to go? You start Wednesday."
Damn.
Yeah.
So I'm sitting here. I'm looking at, and I memorized Bryan's badge years ago because of all the reports we had together. 9294 is Bryan, and your badge is 9326. So in the academy, so were you like on your badge the highest of that class?
I was the highest.
I figured.
I was the
Yeah.
last
one.
guy.
Yeah. The last one.
Squeezed
You had to
in.
be
That
close.
class.
Oh yeah.
But just also for context too, for me, just the move alone and everything that we did prior to even once we got hired with Dallas, it was hard for me. It was hard to come to a place where I didn't know anybody. I didn't know this culture. I didn't know anything about Texas or Dallas other than the Dallas Cowboys. That was it.
You were fully intent on taking your talents to South Beach.
That's it. That's right. That's right. And we were gonna win not just one, not just two, not just
Yeah.
But no, we I didn't want to be here, and it took me a while to get used to this because I had left everything I'd known, friends, some family, all at home in Miami, and came here, and everything about Texas is totally different from Miami. The culture, everything, and
How so? Just out of curiosity. I mean,
well, so Miami is very Cuban influenced, right? There's a lot of Cubans there, very Hispanic, very Caribbean. You have a way of life there with, waking up in the morning, going to the Cuban restaurant, getting your café con leche, your coffee, your Cuban pastry.
Patelitos.
Yeah, so there's, but you don't, and some of these things you don't realize until you leave,
Yeah.
and you appreciate the things that you had. But growing up there, you don't think about,
it's just the way it was.
right.
Yeah.
Like everybody speaks to you in Spanish in Miami. Here, nobody does, right? Everybody speaks English.
Imagine that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But even the little things, we don't have a beach here. We don't. The friends that I grew up with there, we share the same culture,
Yeah.
and the same traditions. As opposed to you come here, and it's kind of just really the dominating Hispanic culture is the Mexican culture, Central American, and so yes, we're all Hispanic and we all speak Spanish, but we all have different cultures. Even our Spanish is different accents, different dialects. And so everything was just so different, and it happened so sudden that
Culture shock.
it
Literally.
it was a huge culture shock to be here.
So was it someone in particular or an incident or what made it okay to be here? Because obviously you guys are thriving here.
I think just time. The longer I got here, and I would go back to Miami to visit, and I realized like how fast-paced life was down there. And every time I would go down there, I was like, oh man, maybe I need to be back in Texas to slow some things down, and got to appreciate the fact that I could live comfortably here. The cost of living was at the time way cheaper than it was in Miami. And but it took time. I mean, I eventually at the age of 25 met my now wife,
Better say her name.
Rosie Candelaria,
Yeah.
right?
Shout out Rosie.
Shout out to Rosie. And so once kind of life settled in and my life started expanding and growing, to a girlfriend and now wife and now mother of 2 children, beautiful children, Michael and Elizabeth. This is home now, right? This is my home, and I don't plan on going anywhere. So
Good. So in the academy, y'all started the same class. Y'all started up. What was that like? Y'all sit next to each other, obviously.
Yeah.
The entire
It's the
freaking
last
academy.
name, so you have to sit next to the person with your.
How big of a beating was that? I mean, okay, so you do have two. You're so similar. However, you are different in your approach to clearly studying. So
And staying awake, apparently. I'm
Yes,
guessing
staying
A was
awake, I
the
get it.
alarm clock in the class.
so he's over there.
No, but it was different, I guess, for me too, because at that point, this is what I wanted to do, right? So I'm focused, and I'm gonna commit now 110% to this. So, not saying that I wasn't committing to high school or anything, but my focus, there was no drive for me necessarily in high school.
High school is basically. The academy is basically high school for police. I mean, it's what it is. And
And but for me, like now I'm starting what I've always wanted to do.
It's your dream.
Right. So
Right.
I'm going to take it. I was going to take it seriously, and I did. I did study and did very well. So
And we used that. I mean, we lived right next. We lived in the same apartment complex, so easier to carpool. We'd carpool once a week.
That's nice.
We
Yeah.
studied together.
Yeah.
So it was very, very convenient being in the academy and studying the same material.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So you just bounce out. Hey, were y'all DT partners?
Oh, well, no, but they would
Really?
do a lot of, hey, Candelarias, let's do the demos. And then they would slam us to the ground or have us slam each other to the ground.
Right.
Yeah, they definitely did that a lot.
Who were your DT instructors? Just curious.
It was actually,
Corporal Moore at the time. Now he retired from here as chief, assistant chief Moore.
Oh, Avery. Yeah. Okay.
Avery.
Okay.
But he was our DT, and I think Evidin would come in sometimes.
Munoz.
Parrot, Munoz.
Mata.
Yeah, Bobby Perry. Yeah, Mike Mata.
Yeah.
Okay.
yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it was definitely interesting. I mean, like I said, the competition, Bryan, I'll admit here, was always the fast one too. So Avery would always get behind me, and I was always second in the class. So he's first, I'm second, and I'm trying my butt off to catch up to him or do whatever I had to do. But yeah,
So who's older?
me,
Gabriel.
by a minute.
And then now you're junior to your brother on the police department
Ooh.
by a handful of badge numbers.
Yeah,
And then, and then who promoted first?
I did.
Oh no! We promoted to corporal. At the
Oh,
same
that's right.
time.
Yes.
But somebody had to have a better score.
I did.
Oh, Brian.
now Brian
for the
is-
listener, Brian had the better score.
He did actually. Man, I'll give it to him. I'll be honest to say that.
Hey, sorry to interrupt. What? Okay. We were on the team together when you promoted to senior corporal.
Yep.
And what was the carrot that I gave you? If you did well, you scored in the 70s.
Yeah.
What I said that if you scored above this grade, I would give you what? Tell the listener.
A Dwayne Wade rookie card.
Not only a Dwayne Wade rookie card, but an autograph rookie
Autographed,
card.
yeah. Autographed
And
rookie card.
did I live up to that?
You did.
Okay.
I couldn't believe you did that. I still have that card like hidden away.
Well, I hope so.
Yeah. I have a bunch
here
of.
I am.
yeah,
I'm promoted
Gabe-
to lieutenant,
yeah,
and I
yeah.
get a hey, you want to come on the podcast?
Hey, man. Hey,
Congratulations.
Which I love it though.
Being on the CRT at Southeast, you got perks.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
you
could
did
tell.
get perks.
I could tell.
And
They were
went
just
through-
glad to get rid of me.
I just remembered that. Yeah.
So
went-
again,
went
as
through a
senior
lot of doors
corporal,
together.
as senior corporal now, Brian is senior to you still.
Yes, correct.
Is that driving you nuts?
No, I got to give him a lot of credit for the senior corporal exam. I mean, he was dedicated. I think for the majority of the listeners that ever taken any police exam, you're motivated. You print out all the copies, you get all the books. You're motivated for the first week and overwhelmed, right?
Yeah, there's a ton of
It's
information.
a ton of information that you have to memorize, and so I did it. I was like, yeah, I got this, and put it away. And Brian was studying. Every time we talked, he was studying because at this point we were no longer living next to each other in an apartment. I actually had my own house at this point.
He's married.
Yeah,
I'm living with my girlfriend Rosie at the time.
and so he went above and beyond, and he gave me a call. I think like 2 weeks before the corporal exam, and he's like, "Hey man, have you studied? You want to study together?" I'm like, "I haven't done anything," and he's like, "Yeah, come meet me at the library."
So you basically turned into him like he was in high school.
Correct.
Y'all switched. Okay.
Well,
Correct.
he, to his credit, he had a newborn child.
Yes.
Right.
Which
and
is
so
difficult.
I didn't have any children at the time, and I my drive was different, right? Like I had let the first opportunity of taking the senior corporal exam kind of go by me and didn't take it seriously. But then I also saw my friends leave and do the things that I wanted to do, which at that time was SWAT, right? I was like, damn, man, I'm letting all these people are going to SWAT and I'm not, right? Like, so how do I get there? Well, I've got to take, at the time, you had to be a senior corporal to be in SWAT. So I was like, I got to take this thing seriously because I can't let another opportunity pass me by. I'm just going to let all this time pass by, and then I'm not going to accomplish what I want to do. So I studied. I mean, I had a shoebox full of flashcards. I mean, just stacks. I mean, I wrote all the general orders on flashcards and everything. So my goal was I need to get in that first round, because after that first round of promotions, if there's an opening in SWAT, I got to be available to take it. I have to be available. So that was my driving factor. I was like, there's nobody. I'm going to do whatever I got to do to make sure. And again, that's my quote unquote competitiveness coming out of me, but nobody was going to make sure,
But it was for a personal goal. It was your personal goal
absolutely.
in which you wanted to do.
And you attribute that back to your dad?
I do, because again, everything he touched, he took 110% serious, and he was great at. And I had my goals, which again were to be exactly like him. He did SWAT in Miami-Dade, the SRT. And so I knew that I wanted to be in SWAT, but how do I get there? Well, first thing I got to do is take the senior corporal exam. And how do I get in the first time? Well, I've at least try out. I have to score high enough to get in the first round. And so it's on me now. Mm-hmm. Nobody else. It's on me. So every weekend and every day I was studying. It was either at the library or I was at home. Once my wife went to bed, I was studying. And I did. I think it was like, I don't know, out of 500 people, I was like 10th.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, he killed it for sure.
You're like gritting your teeth. I'm kidding.
No, but look, for a guy that didn't study, all he did was 2 weeks with me, and he scored us like a 70-something on the damn test. And it was second round promotions, but he got promoted.
Yeah.
You know?
And so when you promoted, Gabe, you went to Northeast?
Yeah, so I went to Northeast, and I was still just like him. I let the first one go by. I didn't even sign up for the test, and I went to in a very young point in my career. I think I had 4 years on. I went into deployment, working overnights, the fourth watch hours, the 8P to 4A.
Yeah,
and I was lucky though, right? Plain clothes, doing surveillance at a patrol station. 4 years on, I was very lucky. So, and I loved it. That was the pinnacle of my career. Plain clothes, man. Deployment, loved it.
Did you ever consider narcotics, undercover narcotics?
No, and I'm sure we'll get to that because I ended up as a sergeant working in Vice,
which
was it's not narcotics, but it's undercover investigative work, and so but no, I mean we have to separate the plainclothes. It's not undercover work. It's strictly surveillance.
It's a surveillance platform, and Lieutenant Rickerman came on earlier, and he kind of went into great detail about when he was in deployment at Southwest. Southwest was kind of the grandfather of the deployment unit. Sergeant Conaway, he's called him the godfather of deployment here. So it is a strictly surveillance platform. However, y'all do other things too, but it's not just. But you go around in a plainclothes and your support for patrol as well as like crime response teams.
Yeah,
right.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, and there's no better thrill to watch a crime go happen right in front of you. And then but the problem is you can't get out of the car, right? Like the rules. You hear
that, Lieutenant Rickerman?
Yeah, you're not supposed to get out of the car. I mean, but no. So I mean, so my drive was I'm in a good spot, and I think if the timeline is right, I had a break where I did 2 years in Deep Nights deployment, and then they had a LIFO 2 position citywide, which LIFO needs last in first out. Because of manpower, and so I got out. But then I went to I became the intelligence officer at Northeast, which was a brand new position at the time. Nobody
explain to the listener what that is.
Well, I'm sure it's evolved since I had it at first at Northeast, or even when it was first created. But it was really an administrative job. You're reading reports and gathering any type of intel to give it to those CRT deployment units, patrol, even helping the crime analysts pull numbers, statistical numbers, and really working for the deputy chief at the time, who was chief. Oh, I'm drawing a blank. What's his name? He was in narcotics.
Acord?
Acord, yeah. Great guy.
And Andy Acord.
Yeah. And so, I did that for a year, but I realized real quick this wasn't for me.
It's a lot of numbers and a lot of
administrative work.
But it's a community. It's a intelligence-led policing model.
Correct. Yeah, and it's not, and it kind of fooled me because I thought intel well, we have our unit intelligence, and it was not, it was far from that. It was an administrative spot. And so I knew I had the opportunity to now go and apply for days deployment as like a 5-6 year officer, right? I can go, oh my God. And I got it. Right. So
At the time, it was kind of unheard of, but now it's normal.
yeah, now it's normal.
right.
But
Yeah,
even,
yeah.
I mean, when I got on,
Yeah.
I was separated by like 15 years with the rest of the individuals. You know, everybody was an old head, you know, in my squad, in our squad.
Well, obviously, they liked you. They, you got it.
Yeah,
They wouldn't
no,
take you
and
otherwise.
it was a blast. Those guys were great. It was a great time.
So you both took different styles of policing out in the street. And Bryan, when you got out to Southeast, you did your training at Northeast, and then you went Southwest, or your South?
No, so when I graduated the academy, I trained at Southwest.
Okay.
And then after training, they just shipped me out to
Yeah,
Southeast.
that was going on back then.
right.
Okay.
You would train somewhere, and then they send you another place. And actually, Gabe trained Northwest.
Yeah, I trained at Northwest, and then when that movement happened, it affected our whole academy class.
Yeah.
I got moved to Central.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. And then you ended up at Northeast. Okay.
Correct.
Yeah.
So Bryan, when you first got to Southeast, what did you think of that?
So I was kind of pissed.
I'm already laughing.
Yeah.
I was kind of mad because I had just spent all these weeks in training memorizing Southwest Oak Cliff
Streets,
right?
yeah.
And so now you're sending me to a place, again, not even from Texas, so I don't even know anything about Dallas. Now you're sending me to a brand new place. I'm not being trained, so I have to figure this stuff out by myself. And all I knew, because I'm off training, I just want to catch bad guys. Like that's
Well, there's plenty there.
right. And that's that South Dallas, Pleasant Grove area
Yep.
of Dallas. And so quickly, though, I fell in love with it. I fell in love with not just the part of the city that I'm working at, but then the officers that are working at Southeast. Every substation has its different culture and different officers and personalities, but there was something unique about Southeast. And people call it God's country, and I truly believe that. That's God's country right there. But, I had the opportunity. I met you, and I've met a ton of other people, and that's how I grew in this career, was being at Southeast and hanging out with you, and
Yeah,
it's great.
When you got, we had an opening on the CRT on, shout out Sergeant Robert Grant.
Yes.
He was running our team, and he couldn't wait to retire to get away from me terrorizing
I
him.
think from everybody.
Yeah, I don't blame him.
Yeah.
I miss that guy. God, he's
Great sergeant.
great person,
Yeah,
and then
great
a
person.
great sergeant. Started with being a great person, then that just being a great sergeant just kind of came with it. So when you got on a CRT, can you tell the listener about that?
Yeah, so I'd been at Southeast for a little bit, and let me backtrack a little bit. I had known when I went to Southeast from Southwest after training, at some point, me being at Southeast for a little while, I kind of took a liking to chasing dope. And when several officers at the station knew that that's where I was going with my patrol career, they turned me to you, Joe, to like really hone down on how to be good at chasing dope. And so I leaned on you a lot, and there are some stories there where I text you about some stuff and information, and you would crack jokes or whatever.
Okay, yeah, it was okay. So one of the stories is I get a phone call from a number I didn't have saved. I didn't know, and then I get this long, like 2 minute voicemail. Oh, this is Officer Candelaria, and I'm on the evening CRT. And what it was is like there was like a CRT made up for like a burglary. It was basically like a mini burglary task for it. Forsha was running.
That's
that.
right.
And you were telling me about some dope house on Blueberry.
That's right.
And you were educating me on that there was an addict out front,
Right.
raking the dirt, and you let me know that was a that was commonality with drug houses, that sometimes the main dealer would let the addicts work out there, and they would be paid in return with a crack rock.
in case you didn't know.
So
Yeah.
I listened to it several times and wrote all that shit down, and I studied it. Like I had flashcards made up, like you did for the test.
yeah. So what people don't know is that I was trying to get in your good graces, right? I wanted to learn how to be really good street cop and dope chaser. So I, when people said reach out to you, I was like, well, how do I show Joe that I'm interested in this work, and how does he trust me to bring me into his little quote unquote crew or clique? And
It's definitely by leaving a 2-minute voicemail,
Right,
explaining the nuances of drug
I
dealing.
fell in love.
I'm a young cop, and I was trying to do everything I could to.
I'm just
get
taking notes, man. This is great.
Yeah, Brian, Gabe sitting over here gritted. Like, it's great.
So
Like
at
I
some,
said, nobody listens anyway. Don't worry.
but at some point, we ended up kind of not really working together in patrol, but you would help me out and
Yeah.
give me some information, and you'd kind of like start guiding me in the ways of quote unquote dope chasing.
In all seriousness, seriousness, I liked you as a person, and I saw your eagerness, and to be a proactive police officer, it is kind of, you're in the minority, really. I mean,
Right,
to do
right.
that type of work, I knew you were going to do that type of work with or without my influence or working with me, and I was lucky enough to have a lot of veteran officers that taught me. That did not really exist whenever you hired on. They kind of that type of style of policing was kind of going away
Right.
for a lot of different reasons. But there just weren't that many people that was experienced in that. I saw you were going to start doing that, and I saw some other officers, young officers, try to do that type of work, which is very scrutinized, and you really need
Right.
to know. You need to know your arrest, search, and seizure. You need to know how to write reports, and also just talk to people, and also interact with people in that drug world. I saw them get in trouble,
Right.
and a lot of it was just because they didn't know
They
any
didn't
better.
know.
And
Right.
I did not want that to happen to you, and that's why I was like, when then we had an opening on the CRT, I was like, come on,
Yeah.
apply.
Yeah, and so going to the crime response team, the CRT at Southeast, you were there, and a bunch of other guys that we still
Mark
have-
Bacon.
Mark Bacon, Robin Rivera, Travis French,
Helen Guard.
Kennedy. So it was kind of a eye-opening experience for me, because I guess in my mind I kind of knew how to chase dope already, but
Not really.
no, not really.
Not really at all.
But Joe took it very seriously, and out the gate you had me doing a mock trial where I was testifying and you were the prosecutor and or defense attorney to prepare us for court testimony and the importance of it. And as my career continued, I realized how important that is and was to be ready. Like I think we take it for granted as cops, about testifying in court. Like, oh yeah, I remember this arrest. I'll read the report when I get to court that day. And,
Wing it.
right, just wing it. But what is our job, right? And our job, yes, is to arrest offenders and bad people for crimes they commit, but it's also prosecution, right? Making sure these people pay for the crimes they committed. And when I remember specifically, you asked the question during the mock trial, which was, what's probable cause? Can you define probable cause? And I had a hard time explaining it. And you said you're not the only one that can't really define it.
He wasn't plagiarizing.
Right.
He didn't have Gabe's notes to look
Right.
at.
So, but you explained how, that officers know in the back of their mind what probable cause is and how to get probable cause, and when they see it. But
Articulate
But
is
it's
different.
articulating it and why you're doing what you're doing. Right. So that stuck with me even to this day. So, but being in CRT with you guys, it helped me. It helped me become a better officer. You stress the importance of case law. Case law is always changing. There's always new case law coming out, and you would buy books, all the updated versions and stuff like that, and stress the importance of that and how we relate that to what we were doing, which was chasing dope dealers. That's what we were doing, and justifying if we had to kick in a door at a house, why we were doing what we were doing. We're just not kicking a door just because we know it's a dope house. No, like we have to articulate.
We have rules.
Right, we have rules, and there's people have their constitutional rights, right? So, we have to make sure that we're in the confines of the law and policy of the Dallas Police Department. And you stressed that importance to everybody on the team, and I think and I know that made me a better officer, and it clearly shows now as a sergeant. Me being in patrol, me teaching the younger guys what we can and cannot do. And when there is a question, I was like, hey, let's go read something. Let's go pull up some case law. And even when it catches me off guard and there is a troop that says, well, case law says this, pull it up. I'd like to read it. And I think about you. like, good. This is what Joe King would do, you know. And
Well, I saw the importance, but everything that by the time we started working together is something that I learned either the hard way, or I got lucky that it didn't become learning by the hard way, right?
Right.
And so I see a need for courtroom testimony and how critical that is from a prosecutorial standpoint. After going out there having fun, chasing people down and kicking their ass, and if they need it, and
Right.
then throwing them in the jail and writing a report and getting it past the jail sergeant, it goes well beyond that.
Sure.
If you want to make a difference in that community, you want to get, you want justice to occur in the courtroom,
Sure.
and that's when I tried to stress writing our reports for the courtroom, and I wanted to prepare people because this department still does not prepare people
No.
too well
No.
to testify.
and the importance of it.
No, exactly. And you do not want to get a bad reputation at court with a judge, a prosecutor, or a defense attorney. A defense attorney sees you as being weak up there. He'll lick his chops when
Yeah,
you're
they'll
up
rip
in
you
that
apart.
state. Yes.
Yeah, they'll rip you apart.
So, in a side note, so that's why I started that courtroom testimony class, and everybody that went through did not look stellar. But at that moment, you learn right then, damn, this is something I need to work on. And
Absolutely.
it kind of humbled. And I think that's important. I'd rather you be humbled and made self-aware within amongst your peers as
Absolutely.
opposed to in front of a judge, a jury, and a prosecutor who sees your name on a report and go, I'm going to
Want
plea
to
this.
embarrass you in front of everybody?
And that's,
You know?
and when a defense attorney, they're doing their job.
Right.
If you do not prepare for your case and for your testimony as an officer or as a detective, that's on you. The defense attorney, you can't take it personal. The defense attorney's job is to do their job, is to throw up smoke and mirrors or make you look silly and lose credibility.
That's right.
That's their job. And it's up to you to prove that. And actually, on a sidebar, the wellness unit that we just got going here in DPD, I'm going to, because part of wellness, there's anxiety that comes in different forms on this job and in different aspects. Our department, when you have to go and testify and you don't have the, if you're not equipped with the education on it and also the style, that can cause anxiety to get in that witness box. This wellness unit, I am going to start up I'm going to kickstart that testimony class again.
Good.
And I'm going to put
Yeah.
it out there for our officers to come in. I will run it in here, probably in this room, and we'll help officers in that respect.
That's awesome. No, that's great.
It's needed. And I'm glad that you got some from that because
Oh yeah, no, and I got a lot. I mean, CRT at Southeast with you guys. I mean, my Lord, we went through so much, and I also believe that that's when we were in CRT is where we started to see maybe the shift, and in command staff and the shift in police work.
how so?
Well, when I got to Southeast in 08, it just kind of seemed like all officers were doing their thing, no holds barred, nobody was getting in trouble much. Command staff would leave us alone for the most part. I mean, we had our problems with some commanders, but nothing crazy. But then it just seemed that maybe the focus and the ideology of policing kind of started to go away from proactive policing to more call response
It's reactive.
and
Yep.
to reactive policing. But all I knew was proactive policing, right? And that's all we did in CRT was proactive. You know, we weren't responding to anything. We were proactively looking for dope dealers. And there was a point in time, and I think it was when, can I say his name? Major Stokes
Yes.
was our major and started kind of giving us pushback on what we were doing.
Yeah.
And really wouldn't listen to whether we had case law or we were in the confines of our policy. We were staying within our policy. It was just the image,
The
or
perception,
the perception
of
of what we were doing.
Honestly, the potential perception of it. It wasn't actually the perception.
Right.
It
Well,
was
even just
potential.
the dangers associated with
Yeah.
kicking in a door to a dope house with dope dealers and guns and all this stuff. The perception of, well, we're going to get into a shooting or we're going to force a shooting. And I don't think we were ever involved.
No, I literally chased dope from right off of training in 97 all the way up to September of 2016. I've never had to pull trigger. I've been involved. I was at the scene of two. I've been shot at on one, and I have I've been there for 2 other officer-involved shootings, but the amount of contacts that we had, and the amount of really violent people that we encountered, I don't know, chalked it up to a lot of luck, but also a lot of skill
and surprise factor.
Yes,
you know?
and when being the aggressor and commanding the situation, I think helped a lot.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Yeah, you're right. It started definitely taking a toll. So, Gabe, whenever Bryan, did he share any of these crazy ass stories with you from the? No, you did.
Oh yeah, all the time.
Okay.
No, he did. And you know, if we're gonna be honest here, there was times where I was actually like,
dude, you need to
careful, chill. Yeah, like what are you doing, man? You know, and he would. Again, I didn't know you at the time. You know, he would always talk about you and show me your text messages.
Oh,
you know,
what? Never mind. We're not going to no picture text message.
Yeah.
Joe has never sent a text message if anybody's looking.
No. And I think you ended up getting. You know, Bryan actually got me to start sending you pics randomly too.
Yes, and then I got all of them. But no, I mean, I would tell him, like, hey, man, are you sure what you're doing is right? And he was like, oh, case law, and we're in department policy. You know, I was just thinking, okay, well, cool.
Be careful.
Yeah, be careful because, you know, it's just like in any department, sometimes if they want to make an example out of you, they will. And
absolutely.
So that was always in the back of my mind.
Catch the wrong person at the wrong day and yeah.
Right, they'll find whatever and you sneezed wrong and, hey, they got you. So, yeah.
You get caught on the camera sneezing wrong, they can get you.
Oh, yeah. So that was really it. I mean, but I know he was having a lot of fun. He would always tell me the stories.
All right, Gabe, I got a question for both of y'all. How do you think Bryan differs from you as a cop and as a person and a cop? How do you think y'all differ?
I mean, holistically, he's always the more competitive, right? Like he had his goals set way ahead of time, right? For the people that know us, we definitely have taken complete different career paths. We just have. And, you know, some information is new to me today, but there's also, obviously, I've known this guy my whole life. But yeah, he's goal driven for sure. And I'm goal driven to a point, but I don't look at things 5 years in advance. I just don't. I didn't even think I'd be here today as a lieutenant. Just wasn't in my wheelhouse. Just did it. You know, it was one of those things that
organically happened.
Yeah. It's funny because I just met with retired Chief Spivey. Chief had lunch with him, and we had a little break, and he asked me that question, like, where do you see yourself in 5 years? And I just said, I don't know. I take it one day at a time. Yeah. You know, that's just me. It's my personality. You can ask my wife.
It comes to you.
Yeah.
What will come to you comes to you.
Yeah.
Right? Okay.
Yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong. What I do, I'll give it 200%.
Yeah.
But I just go where the flavor of the day is.
Right. Mm-hmm. Bryan, so how do you think you differ?
Well, yeah, that's the best way to put it. I mean, I'm super competitive, not just with everybody, and even Gabe doesn't know, even with him, like to this day. And, he took a different path. I knew I wanted to go to SWAT and I was going to be there. Now, where I'm at now, I never thought would happen. I never thought I'd be a sergeant, right? Never thought I'd leave SWAT. I thought I was going to retire out of it.
We're going to get into that.
But absolutely. Gabe, again, and it's kind of been like that with Gabe, kind of just like he takes things day by day and as they come. I've always kind of been in, I'm going to do this and I know I'm going to do this and I'm going to work extremely hard to get what I want and nobody's going to beat me at it. And the competitive nature, I mean, there's just, even Gabe doesn't even know this, and he's going to know today. But like studying for my sergeant's exam, we were studying at the same time for our promotional exams. His test for lieutenant was just a month before mine, the written and the assessment. So I knew what he was scoring before I took my test. Yeah, you laughed. Mm-hmm. So the written came, and he scored. Whatever you got out of it. I think it was 25th out of whatever, how many couple hundred people took the test. And I'm like, fuck, I got to score better than a 25 on this test, right? Like I got to be better than 25th. And so written score came out and I was 10th. I was like, okay. But
inside
then the assessment,
he's jumping.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and the assessment comes around And that, as you guys know, assessment centers can really push your grade up because it's
Or down.
It's worth 70% of your overall score. Well, Gabe jumps from 25th to 8th. And I'm like, you got to be shitting me.
I can't
This is
even go up
unattainable.
17.
It's going to be hard to go up 2 spots being at 10, right? Like, I got to go up to 7th. And, I'm thinking in my mind, like, I got 300 people I'm competing against. Like, oh, man. So
301.
So when I was studying and I had like that month extra, I guess, in advance, knowing what he got, I was making sure that I was going to do better overall.
I should have never studied with him.
Yeah,
No.
yeah.
But that's just what goes through.
That's how you, that's okay. That's
Through
what
my
makes you
mind.
tick, right?
Right.
That's
And it's not just
you're-
him personally, but even like when walking into the auditorium to take the written, I'm looking around at all 300 people and I'm
you're
like,
sizing everybody up. Yeah.
I'm going to do better than every single one of you. That's how I'm looking at it. I'm going to outdo you guys because I've put the work in and nobody's going to take this away from me.
So you both knew you wanted to be police officers, so there was really never another profession,
No.
right? What do you see Gabe doing if he wasn't ever a police officer? What else could he do?
Man.
Synchronized swimmer.
Yeah, synchronized swimming to classical music.
Wow.
We did
Yeah.
wear the Speedos.
It's a good question, and he may have. I think maybe loss prevention would have probably been something, and I know that's kind of law enforcement ish. But I don't. Honestly, I don't know if there's anything interesting that Gabe would have done other than something in that realm of investigations, maybe for a private company or working for, like a bank or something like that, to investigations.
Gabe, what about Bryan? What else could he do?
Raking leaves in front of a house. That's for sure.
To get payment with a crack rock.
Raking the dirt, yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean,
there wasn't no
I bet a DJ.
grass out there. The DJ. Oh,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Hey,
I
it
mean,
wasn't Brian. What else would you do? It was Gabe. What else would Brian
Yeah,
do?
exactly.
Quit jumping the question.
Yeah, sorry.
no, it's almost the same thing. I mean, we had our minds set for a long time. So, I mean,
it's hard to imagine anything different.
yeah. I mean, I can give my own answer, and it's about myself, and we all went to.
Well, Brian already did. You might as well go ahead and do that also.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, we went to magnet school for music, right? And I always thought, I'm not a great musician, but it was interesting for me, right? I did music for a long time, and I was like, oh, whatever, I'll figure something out. And some part of me wanted to major in music, and never went down that path. I taught myself drums. I still do karaoke like once a week at home. I'll bring out the keyboard and still play a little bit, but now it's just a hobby, right? Like now, and I enjoy it, and I try to pick
relaxing.
up. Yeah, I try to pick up the guitar. Couldn't learn it. I tried. I don't know what it is about that guitar. I just could not learn.
I would love to do that.
Got into woodworking and started building barn doors and different things like that. So I just started picking up hobbies, and I was good at it. I mean.
Gabe, is that how you relax? You think is that what you do to kind of recalibrate your mind?
Yeah, and what's funny is now I have such a busy lifestyle, right? Busy work hours, but yeah, I mean definitely before I promoted, for sure that was my woo-saw, right? Like if I could spare a weekend and somebody wanted a barn door, I'd make it. If they wanted a workbench, I'd make it, and it definitely is relaxing. Time flies, and you're in your own zone. And it was great. It is great, and I can still do it today if I wanted to. It takes a lot of time. Yeah.
I want to touch on some critical incidents here.
Okay.
Here in a minute. But first, I want to tell the listener about a little story. One day, Bryan and I were on the CRT together.
Oh my God.
All right, Bryan. So I want to tell, before we get into some critical incidents that are going to go in a lot of different directions, I want to give the listener a little story from when we were on the CRT. So
is this the roast Bryan hour now?
It won't be an hour. It'll just be a few minutes.
Okay.
So, but it will be the gift that keeps on giving.
Yeah.
I know that.
All right.
So you and I were in we're in the squad car, and we're going Casa Cavasso. Shout out Casa Cavassos are off Jim Miller.
Greatest
Samuel.
Tex-Mex restaurant there
Great
is.
fajitas,
Yeah. And so we're sitting there waiting on everybody else, and a call comes out and it's been holding it. And in the comments on the NBC, it says basically it was an outcry from a complainant, and basically said that they had been assaulted, sexually assaulted.
That's right.
And then it went in. It had a comment, and it said by a certain person or type, right, or profession, potentially.
Potentially, yes.
So you're like, hey man, this is effed up. They're calling this guy Speech the Rapist.
That's right.
And So
yes.
I look. You had the most serious look on your face.
Just absolutely.
I thought it was his
disgusting.
nickname
Yeah,
that they were.
yeah,
That
that'd be
he
a very
had given
unfortunate
himself,
nickname.
or
Calls himself
Yeah.
Speech.
Yeah, and so I look at it. I look at the call sheet, and then I look up at you and stare at you for about 30 seconds, and I go, Speech therapist, and you had a different shade of red on your face I've never seen before.
well,
And-
between
and
the
then
word
that
therapist,
grin.
there was like a small space between the and rapist,
Yeah,
right? So it read in my mind.
Yeah, I could see. I could
Speech
see
the
that.
rapist, like, and it's talking about a rape that occurred.
Yeah,
So
I could.
It always reminds me of the Celebrity Jeopardy with Sean Connery.
yeah. Oh yes,
Yes, that is great.
I'll take.
Speech the Rapist.
Yeah, but the look of just utter defeat. On his face, and in the grin,
that was-
the grin, and you were like, "You asked, man, you're gonna tell everybody else on the team, are you?"
That's probably like
You
10
know-
plus years ago,
oh yeah, yeah,
and it still resonates
it
today.
haunts. Yeah, nobody listens. Oh, nobody listens to this. Don't worry.
Yeah, right.
The best part is, and if anybody knows Bryan, he does not lack confidence at all.
No.
So to imagine, like, number one, like the first thing I ever saw of you was just striding through Southeast like you were 10 feet tall.
Like he owned
That's
the
right.
keys to the door.
Yeah,
That's right.
So to imagine Bryan just defeated and just deflated is
And in front of
hilarious to
Joe,
me,
because it's not going to be kept secret. You know what I'm saying? It's not going to. Like, I think everybody that I knew, whether it was in the department or family wise, or people down in Miami for some reason, got this text message from Joe. And
They will now.
Bryan, exactly.
he's gonna look it up and actually
Yeah,
screenshot
yeah.
the call sheet.
That's going to be the title of the episode. No,
Actually, I think Visinet goes back that far, so I'm gonna.
dude,
Look at the call sheet.
I'm serious.
It may
That'd
be
be
there.
funny.
Yeah.
Maybe
So,
there.
so Gabe, I want to get your thoughts on this topic. This the Speech the Rapist. What do you you just recently heard about this?
Yeah. You told me, and I was like, man, I wish I was a fly on the wall there, because he never gets defeated. I'm usually the butt of the jokes too, so it's usually on me, right? And then he tells me this, and he's like, don't tell him anything. I'm gonna wait for this day. And I was like,
it
I
was
can't
great.
wait.
It was
Well,
so great.
and for the listeners and for anybody, you weren't safe at Southeast CRT, or even just at Southeast.
Third watch for sure.
Third watch, absolutely, which is the evening watch. But you were not safe. I remember a guy named Officer Bird, and there happened to be one day a dead bird in his mailbox, in his mail tray at work.
It seemed fitting,
Right.
I mean,
No,
I don't know. Who
that's
did, I don't
how
know who did that.
unsafe
But
you are at Southeast, and even more so at Southeast CRT.
do you remember at Southeast when somebody, I don't know who, somebody, those little tiny the bags of dog food they give away at a festival? And
Yeah.
So somebody had cut the end off the dog bag, and they put it up in a tall mail tray. So there was a short officer like myself had to reach up and see something in his mail tray, and he pulls it out. Well, the dog food bag was open on the other end, and it ended up all over the place.
awesome.
That's awesome.
It's probably still there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I tell that listener that story. It's funny. You and I been joking about it, a decade, and it still brings a smile.
Yeah.
And,
No. It's
yeah. And now that's
It's
what I think
embarrassing
I'm
still
gonna,
to this day.
I'm gonna go to Spirit's Halloween store and see if they have that costume. I'm gonna go as that is. That's what I'm. That's what I'm
You're gonna
trying
go
to go.
Speech the Rapist?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm gonna call them up and ask them if they have that in stock.
Anal bum cover.
Yeah. You know what? They'll be flying off the shelves now with this when this hits.
That's right.
So now we're gonna cleanse our palate with some critical incidents.
All right.
So, Bryan, I want to talk about the Dixon Circle shooting and when that happened. Can you kind of just tell the listener? Well, first I want to say Dixon Circle is a part of South Dallas that is, it really seems like it's its own city.
Yeah.
within South Dallas, and the community is very tight. It's very crime ridden, and usually in a lot of ways they kind of police themselves over there.
That's right.
And but it is very crime ridden. It's very gang ridden, and it's just I want to lead up into a shooting that happened over there. And can you kind of tell a little bit about that and your role in that?
Yeah, so the officer that was involved in it, Officer Rowden, we were buddies, and at that time, we would even hang out sometimes off duty, so we were pretty tight. At the time, I wasn't in CRT; I was just on patrol, and I was riding with my old partner back then, Keith Lewis, and we would meet up with Rowden. Rowden was on our evening detail. There was 2 shifts. There was a 3 p.m. to 11 p.m. and a 4 to midnight. Myself and Keith were on the late shift, and Rowden was on the earlier shift. So routinely, he would be out a little bit earlier. He'd usually snatch a couple calls or go to 7-Eleven or something and kind of wait for us to get off detail and then go chase some dope. And then that day, I'm at the station. We're all getting details over with, and we're getting our stuff together, our bags, putting it in the squad car. And I didn't know where Rowden was at. And some point, and I didn't even know he answered a call. And the call that had come out that I guess he had answered was there was a dude that was duct taped and tied up, basically being kidnapped and taken into a house over there in Dixon Circle.
It's like a hostage situation, it sounded like.
Yeah,
right? Yeah.
Right. And so him and a couple other officers were headed that way. But I had no clue at the time that they were even on this call. And while sitting in the at the station, I hear Rowden get on the radio, but the voice that came through that radio was not Rowden. It was a very deep, grunty, like authoritative voice, and he was calling for Began, Officer Began at the time, and he was saying, Began, get over here now. Just you could tell the stress that was in his voice. And I'm like, what the hell is going on, right? Like, he doesn't ever sound like this. And that's when I looked up the call, see what he was on. And I'm like, oh, okay, so this is probably a legitimate deal. Like, somebody did get kidnapped, and they're getting into some stuff right now. And then, I don't know, shortly thereafter, he gets on the radio, and he says, shots fired, we got somebody down. We got I think someone down or one's down. And I'm like, oh, dude, I got to go. I got to go check on my guy. And so me and Keith, we haul ass over there. It rains police, everybody from Southeast and their mother is going out there. When I get there, I don't remember exactly where on the street this occurred. I know it was off Dixon and whatever side street that was that the shooting occurred. But I see Rowden on the sidewalk, pacing back and forth, drenched in sweat, stressed out, right? So I'm like, okay, something, it's for real, right? And again, I don't know what's going on. All I know is I got to take care of my buddy. So I asked him, what do you need? We got to get you somewhere. Myself and some other people, I think, got him into a squad car, get him some AC, because it was hot that day. It was the middle of summer. It was probably like 105 degrees. And I remember asking him a few times, like, let me, you want a dip can? I'll go get you a dip can. Is that could help you kind of calm down. And I remember sending somebody to go get a can of snuff. I think it was like Copenhagen or something. And while we were there, it wasn't a very large crowd. And like you said, it being a tight-knit community, anytime something happened that involved police, crowds always kind of formed naturally in that area. But all I knew is that there was a shooting, and that's all I knew about. I didn't know anything else. An officer-involved shooting, and that the suspect, was dead. In front of the actual house where the call came out, I think it was Chief Elsie maybe at the time.
Yeah, she was in Southeast.
Okay, her and a sergeant were using the trunk of the car as a kind of the command post. And, we had to, cut off or set up a crime scene on the street, place a barrier between the crowd and the actual house and wherever the crime scene was at. And again, small crowd, nothing big. But at some point, I hear somebody say they shot him in the back. Well, no way in hell anybody knows anything because this just happened. I don't even know what the hell happened. And the only one that's going to know is the officers that were there and Rowden himself. And that just led into a domino effect where more and more people start showing up. More and more people got aggressive. More and more people were questioning and saying that we shot this guy in the back. And what looked like was going to be just another officer-involved shooting with its normal protocol and measures taking place, now we're looking at a potential riot or kind of maybe a civil unrest. The crowd got from a couple people to maybe a couple hundred people like this, like quick. And we quickly realized we needed more resources. I think we called Dallas Sheriff's Office, DART Police, just to help with manage the crowd, because if it goes off, it's going to go off, and we don't have enough officers at Southeast to handle this, and we still have a crime scene to preserve, right? We still have a shooting scene that we got to make sure that homicide gets there, SIU or whoever needs to get there. And Sergeant Quigg at the time, he was a sergeant now, Major Quigg was there, and I know he was doing everything he could to calm the crowd down. But that, luckily, that didn't turn into something crazy, but had the potential to just get bad, insane.
So that was like a dynamite fuse that was slowly going towards the wick was getting down.
Yeah.
And I thank God Quigg was out there. Quigg knew that community very well.
Yes.
That community, the entire Dixon Circle, the gangs that inhabit that area are the Bloods. Right. They are. They're the Bloods occupied that part of town in South Dallas. Quigg knew them very well. Mm-hmm. And Rowden and I worked together quite a bit.
That's right.
Before I went to the CRT. And yeah, when Rowden gets amped up, something's gone to shit.
Right.
And I remember I just got home that day in the news, and I was watching the news. And Gabe, do you remember that incident?
Yeah, no, I do. And it's funny, he's talking about it, and the only perspective I had was the news. And it to my view, it was two lines were formed. It was the police, and then the citizens of that community. And the way I looked at it was, all it's going to take is one pin drop to set this off. And it's a battle. I mean, it looked like a battle line. That's what it looked like. And it just, in a drop of a dime, the crowd's kind of dispersed. Right? Like, it was an unbelievable sight.
And honestly, from one comment somebody said out there that we shot him in the back. And, it wasn't true. Right. And it's just what started off, set the domino effect where it could have just gone from bad to worse really quickly.
Full out riot and destruction and assaults and people getting injured. That's happened recently in the news. Like, somebody said that officers chased down a juvenile and shot him in the back, and the person wasn't even a juvenile, and the person had a gun.
Right.
It was. I mean, it's something like that. Somebody makes a comment, and the grapevine is very fast out there, and it makes it to the other end, and it's like it literally is like igniting a wick.
Yeah, absolutely.
So in that area, just to finish the rest of that actually was it was a call regarding a hostage rescue type situation,
right?
Because whoever called on that particular house, which was a big drug house in that area, they gave information that something was going on because they knew that information would a quick police response would come.
Right.
And that's what happened. And the guy that the suspect that ended up, he got shot. He was a really well-known drug dealer in that area.
Yeah. And
he had there's a lot of people out there. So somebody gets out there that already does not like the police, and they're against the police, and they just quickly want to spread that word that they was shot in the back because they know what could come after that.
Oh, yeah.
And the mob is very, very malleable.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
So what did you take away, Bryan, from that incident? And what did it change the way you looked at things?
Well, so it was pretty new to me. I don't think I've ever known somebody close to me that had been involved in an officer-involved shooting. I had gone to his house after that incident, check on him and sit with him and his family at the time. And, I saw what a critical incident like that could potentially do to somebody, right? And then how, not that the department responded badly. I don't think they did a bad job or did anything to necessarily bring down his character about it. I thought they did a pretty decent job explaining why he did what he did.
But it could have gone the other way, really.
It should,
quick,
no,
and it has before.
Yeah, absolutely. But in this case, it didn't. But after that incident, once he was cleared from it, it seemed like the department was trying to hide him and make sure that he wouldn't go back to, especially Southeast Patrol. And he kind of took that pretty personal, and it changed him. That incident changed him. I feel bad because I think it ultimately, and I don't know 100%, so he can fact check me on this if he wants to, but he ended up leaving this job after that incident. And the fact that he couldn't get back to where he wanted to be, which was Southeast Patrol. He wanted to be back to normal. And I'm assuming the city took it and the department took it as a kind of like a CYA, like we shouldn't be placing him back in that area. And, we'll take care of him. We can put him somewhere else, but not here.
Yeah. And
it made me realize like things can definitely alter your life after that, after an incident like that.
And it did.
It did. No, absolutely it did.
He did everything right. He did everything right and was justified.
Absolutely.
But he has to live with the fact that he had to take a life, which isn't easy. Even if the other person, they bought that ticket, admission to that event too, right?
Right.
And they earned it, but still he has to wrestle with taking a life, and he has to wrestle with the uncertainty of a career.
Absolutely.
And,
yeah.
Well, and if I'm not mistaken, there were actually threats made against him too once the news came out what was going on, and that's one of the reasons they didn't want him going back to Southeast, because there was a lot of threats against him in particular.
Well, we had to have squad cars at his house in a suburb.
Yeah. Yeah, it changed. It definitely changed the trajectory of his life and career, and he ended up leaving the department. I wanted to hit on that story because for that reason, which you just explained, of how it could turn on a dime.
Yep.
And you could be 100% right, but it's still not enough.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Before we get on, and I want to get into, and I'm glad you touched on something about a mindset and a changing of a career and things that weigh on you from this job. We're gonna get into something else later with you, and I'm glad you touched on it right there.
Okay.
So Gabe, where were you at this point? Are you still at Northeast when this happened?
Yeah, I'm at Northeast for sure. What year was that shooting?
2012, maybe.
Yeah. So I mean, I either would have been in that intelligence spot or back in deployment. It just depends on the actual timeline. So. Both positions were daytime, so I know I saw it on the news.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, but for the most part, Northeast, my career, deployment. I mean, 2 years on nights and close to 4 years on days.
Well, you had a big project that you had a hand in, which in the body worn camera program. So whenever we're always, I remember, I'm old enough to remember whenever we all went to dash cams, and at the time when squad cars all got dash cams, people were like, nobody. It's just it brings anxiety up, right? You imagine if somebody going around and somebody's constantly following you and there's a camera on you.
Yeah,
you're going to behave differently. You're going to drive differently. You're going to talk differently. You're going to look differently.
Yeah,
and it just brings a natural anxiety. And I remember when we first had the squad cars that had cameras, not all of them were equipped with cameras. So everybody right out of detail would run and get the cars that did not have the cameras, because not that they were trying to hide something, they just added a layer of anxiety to a job that already is full of anxiety
right.
and stress, it's just something else you just didn't have to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
And then by the time y'all hired on, most of the cars probably all had dash cams.
Yep.
Right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So now we have this new body camera. You're gonna be filmed and filming everybody around you everywhere you go. Gabe, can you tell the listener about it? You know, we're a big major city. Nowadays, pretty much every city, even the smaller ones, has these. But how did that go about when it was first presented, and your involvement on that?
Yeah, so I was definitely at that point in time. I was an intelligence officer at Northeast, and it was right after Ferguson.
What year was that?
Oh shoot, 15.
14. It was about 14ish.
Yeah,
15. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm gonna look it up. Somebody's gonna be fact checking us, but it's in that area. But
so I mean, and I could be wrong, but there was definitely a major incident that brought the country to kind of have law enforcement go towards that, and so DPD was looking into it, and so they had tasked Chief Acord and then at the time Sergeant Derek McCarter to kind of actually start the body-worn camera program. And so at the time we were doing the testing phases, and outside of the technical sides of things on procurement, we actually have to test different vendors. That you can't just say I want this brand or this model. So I was working for Sergeant McCarter, at least in the admin office. So he had asked me like, "Hey, can you help me out with this with this project?" And so me and a bunch of other officers, but I was included. And so we did. I mean, we went and sat through some of the meetings and tested these things out, and then had some group of officers test I think it was 6 different vendors that we had at the time, and then we would rotate it, and then finally we selected the one. Right, we selected the one body camera the department was going to go with.
Why did y'all go? What got you to the point to select that one? What were all the determining factors?
Well, I mean, at a high level, there were some that were just, it was like a brick. It was like another radio on your belt that you and on your chest that just no way feasible. And then you had some that were, you had one that was actually, they had an online platform where you would download your evidence, right, wirelessly through the cloud, right, which was new to us. And then you had one that was kind of similar as far as hardware, but then you have to manually offload it into the computer to be stored. And so I think for easeability, we went with the one just because that online platform where you store your evidence and how you share it was next generation. I mean, it was easeability wise and holistically, that was the way to go. And so that's, ultimately that's why we chose it. I don't think it was financially because it wasn't cheap, right? And we didn't buy one for everybody on the department. If I were to take a guess, I think it was like 100, right, to start off. For
over 3,000 plus sworn. Right?
Correct. And so, and then we went, and then we started choosing volunteers, right? It went out to like volunteers, people that actually wanted.
I volunteered.
I remember that.
I volunteered. Yeah.
Now, did he kind of, he was on the ground floor of this project, Bryan. Did he kind of had talking with your brother about it? Did he kind of sway you, or does he have any influence on you volunteering?
No.
Okay.
Were
you on the CRT? Right?
I was.
That's right. You worked with me.
Yeah, and
I didn't want that shit around. No,
I know you didn't, but I did it because I didn't want to be the example.
Yeah.
Without something happened to me, and I didn't have a camera.
Like in Rowden's situation.
Like in Rowden's,
a body cam would have captured a whole lot.
Right. And so I looked at it and said, when the opportunity came, I said, I raised my hand and say, yeah, I'll volunteer for this. I'll have this thing on my chest because I've got nothing to hide. So.
Let me ask you this: I remember you getting that, and I was a little because oh god, there's something else. Because I was like I said, I'm old enough to remember the dash cams coming around. Right. Let me ask you this: you were in that camera. Did that change how effective we were on that CRT?
I think in the beginning it was until we kind of figured out because even language, right? Like even your language has to change, right? But. We drop a lot of F-bombs and we joke a lot and we play around. And
I don't know what you mean.
Right. But but when you're at some point, I realized doing your job, and if you're doing it right, it's not going to matter. Right. And I think at first you're just like, oh, I've got to police my language. I don't want them to say, why is Bryan dropping an F-bomb, telling this guy to raise his effing hands up when he's not doing it. Right. I didn't want the department to come at me for using profane language. But then it wasn't very long afterwards. It was like, hey, look, like it is what it is. Like eventually we're all going to get this thing and we're not doing anything wrong. So, and look where we're at now, where everybody has one. We're recording all the damn time. And
now people just don't know any better. It's
Correct.
just the
Right.
way it's called.
It's the way it is.
It's evolution, and it's just a part of the.
It's like having a cell phone in your hand.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, Gabe, whenever you were looking for volunteers, did you have people coming running from the hills to volunteer? Was it kind of hard sell at first?
No, it wasn't actually. I don't remember it being a hard sell.
Were they younger officers?
For the majority, but I mean, you did have some old heads that actually kind of volunteered. And, during the testing, we actually had motors test the cameras because they were, they wanted to test them. And so, I mean, like I said, it was majority young, sure, but you did have some old heads come through that wanted the camera. They actually tested the cameras and then wanted it full time. So we didn't have a limited amount, a small pool from people to volunteer. Because actually, during the testing phase, you have to remember, at least where I was working in Northeast, you had officers buying their own stuff.
That's right.
Oh, yeah,
like I said, I don't remember what critical incident happened.
I think it was 100%. I think it was Ferguson.
Yeah, I don't remember. But there was a critical incident because people were buying their own at the time. And then when we went to this camera, when we finally made the selection, the policy and the law said that you had to have the issued agency's camera. You couldn't have your own.
Of course, yeah. You have to have guidelines and standards and
security and all that.
Of course,
stuff, so.
Right. So,
but I forgot about that.
Yeah, no, people had their own.
Yeah, people wanted to get their side of the story. That's
And I think too, you started again that kind of evolution to police are always doing wrong. Started, especially after Ferguson was like, oh, police aren't doing the right thing. And that camera gave us the opportunity to say,
it was a guilty and proven innocent turn, right?
Right.
Yeah.
I think Ferguson kind of sparked to where we even got to, and we'll talk about it later, but I think even led the way to the 2020 George Floyd riots.
Yes.
Right? This anti-police rhetoric that we have, right now. So,
Gabe, when starting this, did you ever starting up something so big, and you knew it was going to grow, it's going to become big, right? And so did Sergeant McCarter. And I know him well; he's a great guy. He actually did well and left, and he works for a nice company.
Yeah.
So, did you realize how big this was going to be, and how just it influenced the entire Dallas Police Department and the city? Did you realize how big that was when you were on something from the ground floor?
The honest answer is no. This was, again, you look back and, like I said, I'm thinking we bought 100, right? It could be more, but not to the size where we're outfitting everybody. And fast forward my career, when I promoted and went to patrol, did vice, I had the opportunity to go and be the body camera sergeant.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so when I got there, the city had just signed a contract to expand the program to get to where we are today.
And where are we at today, just for the listener?
We're about a little over 2,000, so I went about 2,200 cameras out there. We're about a little over 3,000, and so the goal is to get to that 3,000 mark, which the contract lays out, right? To buy them in years, and we just got approved this fiscal year to buy another 250. And when I got there, they had just replaced, I'd say about 1,500 cameras. So they had the same company, and when we renegotiated, this company had made new cameras, and they replaced 1,500, which was a task in itself, because you had 3 individuals and a sergeant going out throughout the entire department trying to switch them out, on hand train them what this camera functionality is, and get all the hardware and IT stuff out of the way. I mean, that was a huge step. And when I got there, we had just received a ship of 500 cameras, right? And so, I get there, and there was another critical incident, nothing major, right? But I think it was like an officer-involved shooting. And Chief Garcia realized, like, not everybody in patrol has a camera, right? And we were teaching. We had a way we outfit, and we were teaching, but not at the scale that he wanted at. So he basically said, I want all 500 to have cameras as of yesterday. And so we ramped it up. We worked it out where we're working 6-7 days a week, teaching here, teaching at the academy. I pulled people on special assignment, and we made it work. I mean, we deployed 500 cameras to get up to 2,000 total in a matter of 3 or 4 months. And we're still currently teaching, because then as we still have an influx of cameras coming in, we're identifying units that never would have thought to have cameras, like the officers that work downstairs as security, right? Yeah. People that work at the station, people that do different functions that actually come in contact with people.
SWAT, narcotics.
Yeah. I mean, they were in the beginning, but, identifying those people, especially our policy says you're going to execute a warrant, you need your camera on. And so, I mean, it again, like you said, from what we started to where we're at now, and actually the biggest accomplishment for the guys when I was there is we need to get to the basic academy, because that was the hard part, coming back and trying to teach 500 people from this department that hadn't have a body camera, but they're out there working in frontline positions, and pulling them into a 2-day class. That's not an easy task.
No.
You're right. People call out, things happen.
And then we got to think about storage, the data that's collected, the storage and all that, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, luckily we have a good plan. We have unlimited storage. So we have a good plan, but still we have to set up hardware. We have to get IT involved in configuring the networks and stuff like that, and speeds for upload. You start adding and adding and adding. We have to make sure that the speeds are there so that your evidence can be offloaded at a decent time. But now, one of the biggest accomplishments we made is that we taught everybody in that time frame, and we made it to the basic academy. So now you're graduating from the academy with the body cam. So we're not having to catch up. And so now we can plan easier when it comes to buying and teaching.
Yeah, because they just start with it. It's like starting with a gun now, right?
Right.
Starting with a flashlight.
Yeah.
That's part of you graduating.
That's right.
100%.
I like that.
All right, so I think that's enough of the nerd stuff with cameras and storage space and megabytes. And let's get into
flux
some fun
capacitor.
stuff. Yeah, exactly. You warped your camshaft somewhere in there. I don't even know what happened. Bryan, SWAT.
Yeah.
Why was that such a goal for you?
Man, I knew it was something I've always wanted to do. Just, I guess, the idea of having an idea of what they did, which was the run the warrants, the adrenaline dumps, the kicking in the doors. My dad did it, so I wanted to do it, and I wanted to be really good at it or great. But then being in Dallas SWAT has its own reputation.
Right.
And not just here, but nationwide. And, being Dallas SWAT is quote unquote the shit. Like, it is awesome to be Dallas SWAT. And I wanted to, ever since I think it was in the academy, I mean, that's where I had set my goals, like my dream. I'm like, that's where I'm going. That's where I want to be at some point. That's where I want to go do my career. Nonstop, go, kick ass and take names. And then also at the time, some of my friends had gone there, so it made me really want to go just to be with them. And so yeah, I mean, I just wanted to be that guy. And I guess, again, being the competitive nature in myself, where I knew it was going to take hard work. I'm not a very big guy. I'm not tall. My idea at the time was all the SWAT guys are 6'5", 250 pounds of raw steel and sex appeal. And I was like, I'm not that guy, dude. I'm 5'7", 5'6", 155 pounds.
You got sex appeal, though.
Yeah.
Both of you.
Yeah, thank you.
Short and bald.
Yeah. So I was like, I mean, I thought, and it was. I mean, it was a tough road. It was not. It's not easy getting into SWAT. And plus your reputation. I mean, you have to have a pretty decent reputation, and to go anywhere really in this department, any high profile elite unit, and SWAT's elite. So,
was it what you expected once you got there?
And some. Yeah, and some. I mean, when I first got there, I actually kind of was like, wow, this is pretty fast paced. Because I think the first day we were there, it was training. And at the time, I know you remember, but we were working 3 days on evening shift and like 2 days on days.
That sounds pretty typical, yeah.
Yeah, it was weird, but I didn't care, right? Like, I just got to SWAT. But the first day I got there, we were somewhere at some facility training either some active shooter or something like that. And I thought, chasing dope and gigging indoors at Southeast, kind of transitioning over to making entry in SWAT and running and gunning through hallways and buildings, that it wouldn't be that bad. But those guys were really fast, seeing things really quickly, and I was just trying to catch up. I was like, whoa, this is extremely fast. And I didn't know how long it was going to take for me to just be able to catch up to that speed. But it was, when you look back at it, I mean, it's the best job, I believe, on this department. The training you get, the exposure you get, the adrenaline, the family you build, people think that SWAT is just kicking indoors and running the warrants and doing all the whole high-profile stuff. But I always explain it to other people that it's more than that. I think it builds character, and it redefines and hones down who you really are. And because it humbles you. There are things about SWAT that people don't understand, as far as it's kind of like starting over again at the academy, right? You're the new guy. You're expected to be there extremely early, set up training targets, earn your stripes to where the group of guys accept you into their quote-unquote family. And then also when you debrief a operation or an incident, now you're vulnerable because you have to admit what you did wrong to a bunch of your peers that you're trying to sell yourself to say, I belong here. And if you make a mistake, you're in your mind, at least in my mind, I'm thinking like, well, damn, I fucked up. And now they're going to think I'm incompetent. But then you kind of flip the script. If you're there for a while and you're good at your job and you did something wrong and you admit it, then it's like, damn, it sucks because I'm supposed to know what I'm supposed to do, right? I wasn't supposed to make that mistake. And it's humbling in that aspect. You're vulnerable, but it teaches you, it grounds you, and it teaches you the importance of why we do certain things. And where I'm at today, I take a lot of what I've learned and those traditions that we did in SWAT to what we do now in patrol. So when we have an incident in patrol, whether it's minor or big, I always select the officers that were really involved in it and ask them, what it is you did good and did you mess up and what it is you could have done better. And it's kind of embarrassing for them at that point because a lot of them are very young. And again, they're in front of their peers. And after they do so, I explain to them the importance of why it is they're going to admit what they did wrong so we can all learn. We don't have to make the same mistakes. And, every time I do that, I look back and I'm like, SWAT did that for me, So
it's also pretty humbling when you admit that you made a mistake and everybody else already knew you made that mistake.
Oh, yeah.
Way before you knew you made the mistake.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. They're just waiting to see if you can own up to it.
No, there's a lot of integrity checks.
Yeah,
for sure.
Absolutely. Especially when we got the body-worn camera. Because then it really showed your mistake. You couldn't hide.
Like when you bounce a breaching tool off a window into your buddy's head?
Into my buddy's head, yeah.
Yeah.
Tell more about this. I don't need to know about this.
So it's probably going to,
nobody listens, Bryan.
Right.
Don't worry, you're good.
So I was in part of a port and cover team. So in a port and cover, it's basically you're breaking out one of the windows into whatever structure you're going to hit, whether it's apartment or house. This was an apartment. And you're doing it so you can get eyes in before the entry team gets in, and so you can see what potentially any harm that could happen or where suspects are at, gathering intel and potentially minimizing and taking out any threats prior to the entry team going inside. And so my job at that time was to port the window for the two cover guys. And, I didn't put a lot, I guess, of muscle into it and expected it to be just kind of a flimsy window, and it was like double pane and all this crap, and I hit this thing and it just bounced right off the window and the tool went straight into my buddy's helmet. Dink. I mean, just and it's all on camera. It is all on camera. We probably watched that video 100 times in the debrief.
We watched at least that same section 100 times every time we viewed it.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
The speech the rapist moment.
Yeah,
again, important cover.
Yeah,
I think somebody
humbling.
put the holla back girl music to it one time.
That's right. Ding, ding. Yeah, it's just crazy.
So I want to talk about a couple of some incidents that happened over there. Okay.
All right.
You had a hostage rescue on Abrams, 6,000 Abrams. Can you talk about that? About how that went down?
Yeah. So, well, generally, I'm like the furthest one that lives away from Dallas. We have like a 30-mile radius that we have to live to be able to be in SWAT from the central police station. So I live about 29.8999999.888, miles away. Little Ali G reference, by the way. But so I'm always like the last one to show up to the call outs because I live so far. And that was early morning. It wasn't, or when I say early morning, it was like 7 o'clock, 6 o'clock in the morning. I know the sun was out. When I get there, the suspect was involved in a homicide where he killed his baby's mother, and he was inside the apartment with a girlfriend and his two biological kids. And he knew we were there, and he covered up. Didn't he cover up the bedroom window with a sheet, so we couldn't really tell where he was inside the apartment? Were you there?
I don't 100% remember this one.
Okay. And so, long story short of it, I get there and I get with my ASL, Scott McDonald, and kudos to Scott. He's the man and he's my buddy. But the plan was already set. I was part of the entry team, and the guy, there was intel that guy had a weapon and had both kids inside and the girlfriend. So we treated it as a hostage situation. We blew the door, and once we knew we blew the door, we were going in. And I know that when I went inside, I didn't go to the bedroom. I went to the kitchen area, closet, and within a second, somebody says, suspect down. And I thought we shot him. I was like, okay. I didn't hear it, but I was like, okay, we shot him. And I think we had suppressors by then, so it could have been that we had shot him. But shortly thereafter, it was determined that he had killed himself. He had actually shot himself. And then I don't know if that was our first one, but no, definitely wasn't my first one. But you go through this whole process when somebody dies in your custody, where what could be a 4-hour event now is a 8, 10, 12, 13, 14, 15-hour event, because you have to write your statement with special investigations. Crime scene has to count your bullets, each individual operator. And, that was kind of like my first taste where it took a whole unit to where we all went through this process together.
It's an emotional toll, right? I mean, it's stressful.
Yeah, I mean, it's we've got kids. Yeah, and, we've got kids involved, right? So, our mission is to make sure that the kids and the girl and the girlfriend are safe, and yes, the suspect too. But our goal is those hostages, right? We suspend our safety to make sure that they're safe, and at the end we did what we were supposed to do, and it came out okay, and everybody was rescued. Nobody was hurt. So, but yeah, leading up to it, there is there's anxiety that kicks in where you want to make sure that this mission doesn't fail, right? I don't want a dead kid on my watch, or anybody that's innocent. So I'm getting in a few critical incidents because I'm ramping up to something. You and I talked the other day, right?
And I'm watching you, and every time that I'm interviewing somebody on this podcast, and I notice a physical change whenever somebody is we're ramping up.
Mm-hmm.
Right, see it, and
because I know we're going there.
It's natural, yeah. It's coming,
right.
But it's part of the story,
right?
And so that happened on February 9th of 2020, right? That's what I have here, the Abrams deal, right? So can you kind of describe? We're going to get into you mentioned the George Floyd protest earlier. We're going to get into your time leading up to those to that event. Can you kind of talk about that?
Yes. So on May 18th, 2020, I think the riots happened the 20th of May, right?
Yeah, it was about that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So on May 18th, and I'll kind of give you guys a backstory and kind of how this all led up and some of my feeling that the shit was going to be messed up already. So on May 18th, we had a normal day, normal SWAT day, training or running warrants or whatever. I get home that evening, and context, we've been up since probably 6, 7 in the morning that day. And by the time I get home that evening from work, I want to say maybe around 9 o'clock. I know it's around bedtime for me. I get a text from my sergeant, our group does, and says, "Hey guys, stand by for a hostage call." But this one's at our Northwest station. Some dad, I think, had his son hostage. So we're like, okay, we typically just wait for the call out. We get, our sergeant starts to text us periodically with updated information. And at some point during this waiting period of getting the call out, the sergeant texts us, says, "Hey guys, we're actually going to have two call outs, 2 hostage rescues going down. We're going to have one at Northwest station and one at the South Central station." And I was like, okay. And he said, but we're going to split up our teams. We're going to send 2 to Northwest and 2 down to South Central.
Now, for clarification for the listeners real quick, you don't run a hostage rescue without absolutely everybody you have available. So to split it in half was already a big mind bender.
Right. And that's where that's where I say if I give you guys context, like that day felt like stuff was going to get messed up already. Shit was going to go array. Like it was just not going to work out. Because again, I'm thinking in my mind, why are we splitting our resources? Like we've never been taught that. We never trained that. Like we either pick one and then we get another agency to handle another one. And that way, again, we're not limiting our resources, because once we do that, you're splitting up snipers, breachers, negotiators, gas people, Bearcats. You're splitting all your resources.
It's just continuity of the team working together. Yeah.
Right. And if one turns into shit, which one did, and we don't have enough people or resources, then how do we effectively execute the mission, right? So in my mind, when that text came out, I'm like, and I even called Renfro. I'm like, why are we doing this? Like, we don't do that. It's not that's not how we train. So luckily enough, at some point on our way down to our designated location, I was going to the one at South Central, which I don't have the address, but that one, it was a mother with her 2 kids inside. Boyfriend had called 911. They got into an argument. She had shot at him. So we have an aggravated assault with a deadly weapon. She was still inside the house with the kids. At the time, we didn't suspect that this was a hostage situation. It was more of a barricaded with the potential of turning into a hostage deal. So again, as I'm making my way down there, the Northwest hostage rescue gets rescinded because I guess the officers at Northwest took that guy into custody. So we all end up going down to the South Central hostage rescue deal. When I get there, again, I'm like the last one. So I'm walking up to one of the APC Bearcats and trying to see where I fit in, what my job is going to be that night. And from what I remember, the 2 kids were still inside, and Melvin was negotiating at that time. He had already spoken to the boyfriend. The boyfriend had said that the mother, our suspect, was radicalized. She's got these books on Nazis, and I don't know if she made the call or that one time. I think she spoke to Melvin one time, and something about white people are the devils and police are the enemy of the people, and that she was not going to go to jail at the hands of police. That was a pretty big indicator that this was not going to turn out very well. So at some point, I know that Melvin's negotiating and gets in contact with the son who's inside the house. And the son, he asked the son at some, and I'm kind of getting fuzzy about the facts, but I know that the son ends up coming outside and comes to us, the police, us and SWAT. And Melvin talks to him and debriefs the kid, and he says, Mama's in there with his sister, but we're free to go whenever we want, but we've been helping Mom load magazines, right? So I'm like, okay, we're gonna get into a shooting tonight. I mean, that's just she's not gonna go down without a fight. We just got to make sure that one. The daughter's not caught in the crossfire, and or be prepared that daughter may be radicalized as well. You may be coming into a situation where when you get in that house, she might be holding a gun, right? So all those things are like going through your head, and it's probably midnight at this time. Man, we loud hailed. I knew we hit some windows, we broke some windows out, and then eventually set a charge on the front door and actually blew the front door open. And got zero response out of that. Not a peep coming from that house. Not from the daughter, not from the mother. We send in robots to clear the house, and multiple robots, nothing. We don't see anything, we don't hear anything. And at some point, at least in my mind, I'm thinking, is she even here? Like, I started to have doubts. Like, I don't know, she ain't here. Like, somehow or another, we're being played, right? And then there was a confusion about whether we're going to treat this as a hostage rescue or not. And it kind of went back and forth. And the reason why we do that, too, is to get your mind right. Right, like if we're gonna treat this as a hostage rescue, our heads got to be right. We got to be ready for this thing. BPs, everybody's kind of, for the most part, not trying to be, but a little bit more lax. You start talking about hostage rescues, you're a little bit more self-aware, right? Like, we have now a solid fucking mission, which is to take the innocents and make sure that they're rescued. Well, now it's like the sun's starting to come up. It's like 6-7 o'clock, and it's been determined that we're gonna make entry. We can't find her, can't find the daughter with the robots. So let's start taking parts of the house that we know that she's not at and kind of narrow down where she might be. And I wasn't in the entry team. I was outside. I was part of a port and cover, but I was not porting this time. I was actually going to be cover, so nobody was going to get dinged in the head. But yeah, the decision was made to make entry and locate either one of them. When they go inside, we go to our window that we're going to port and cover. And at some point, I hear knocking, what I think sounds like knocking coming on the wall. And it's a consistent knock. And so I have my headphones on, I take one off, and I'm looking at my other cover officer, and I'm like, do you hear, I'm whispering to him, like, do you hear that? And initially I thought, that's that little girl tapping to us, like, hey, I'm here. And I'm like, oh, okay. So I was about to get on the radio and be like, hey guys, I think we've got the daughter on this bedroom. And then within an instant, that small knock turned into some heavy firepower. I mean, just dong, 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 dong. Now you knew the guns were out. That's not us because we had suppressors. That's her. That's Mama. So immediately the decision is made to back out and introduce gas into the house. And it's like 4th of July with the gas stuff. I mean, we're just shooting nonstop gas ferrets inside the windows, inside the entire house. And the shooting continues for a little while, and then there's a lull. And then, I don't know, after a couple minutes, you hear 1 shot, 2 shots, and that's it. And again, it took some time. I think it was determined that some of this shooting was captured on body camera. Where was the shooting happening? We didn't know where the shooting was going down. So we reviewed some of the operators' body-worn cameras, that actually were hit by some of the original shots being fired. What I thought was knocking was actually a .22 rifle, which is why it sounded so low. So they were able to figure out where she was. It was a closet door or a coat hanger closet in the hallway that led into the bedrooms that was covered up by the hallway door, which is why we couldn't find it originally. So it was determined that she was in there. So we set up a charge, and we figured she'd probably be dead at this point. And when we blew with the robot we used, we set a charge and we blew the wall. And we looked in there with the robot, and she was dead. And so was the daughter. And it didn't bother me then. You know, at that point when I knew what had happened, that she was dead and that the daughter was dead, I just figured like that's what those last two shots were. It wasn't until I went in and visibly saw that, right? Because I had a kid at the time. He was a year old. And I was like, fuck, you know, who could do this to their own child, right? And I'm like, I love my kids to death, and there's not something anybody can fucking do for me to let alone anybody touch my children or hurt my children. And trying to understand what would drive a parent to kill their own child and then take their own life, like that radicalization is just beyond me, right? Like I don't understand it. I will never understand it, because my children to me are everything, right? So like it never like even to this day, there's nothing you can tell me to justify other than, yeah, she's radicalized. She reads Nazi books and, you know, all this stuff. Like, okay, so what? That's your child, right? And then I remember walking to my Tahoe to down on my gear. And by the way, I'm deadbeat tired. This thing started at, I think, 10 p.m. And by the end of this, it's 9, 10 o'clock in the morning. And we already have been up prior to that for a whole shift of work. So I am deadbeat tired. So I get to my Tahoe, down on my shit, and I remember sitting down on the curb, and I start thinking to myself, and even Scott McDonald walked up at that time too, and I start questioning why we did what we did. Because in my mind, once it was determined that we're going to treat this as a hostage rescue, why did we back out? Our mission was this little girl. And we know the potential and the dangers that come with hostage rescues. Yeah, we were fired upon, but that's the risk we take during hostage rescues, right? So all that kind of settled in, and I'll be quite frank, that whole situation, it hurt. It hurt bad because, again, I mean, I'm just thinking about my own kid. He's a year old at the time, and I'm like, that's my world right now, and I don't know who could do this to their own child. And then I start kind of blaming ourselves, like, did we fuck up something? Where could we have done better? And why we did what we did? And nothing really was making sense. Nothing was. Like, I was like, man, you know, and I know some people came up to me and like they were like, ultimately she made that decision. Mama made that decision. We didn't do that, right? But in my head, I'm thinking like, yo, our responsibility was that child, and I don't think we did what we were supposed to do that day. And to kind of go back to your question, Joe, which was leading up to the riots. Now, this is 2 days before the riots, right? We have had no fucking sleep. We have been involved, in my eyes, something pretty critical. You know, there's a dead baby girl murdered by her own mother. In those 2 days, we ran, I want to say, either 1 or 2 narcotics warrants, and we were involved in 2 more hostage rescues. So leading up to the day of the riots, we went to work that day, and we were told we got to stay at work. I know I was running on fumes. My tank was on empty, and I was mad. I was mad because I had questions unanswered. Yes, we had a debrief about the incident. It wasn't resolved with me. I didn't think that we came to a conclusion about, we had some people agree on what we could have done, and then some people were like, "Nah, we're not going to do that. We shouldn't have done that. We should have stayed what we did." And and again, I don't know what the right answer is, right? Again, she did ultimately Mama made her decision to do that.
But whatever, the bottom line is that you were affected by this.
Yeah.
Whatever decision was made or was not made, you personally, it was weighing on you.
Yeah. And, a lot of it, I believe, is because I was a new father, right? And enjoying my child. So, yeah, I won't beat this dead horse again with it. But after that incident, and then you had, again, the 2 warrants, the 2 additional hostage rescue call-outs, and now the riots. Okay, so all of us are tired. All of us have had no sleep. And then in my mind, I'm thinking like, okay, this is just another protest. This is just another big crowd forming up. And I knew this was going to have the potential of turning into a riot because the day before there had been riots all over the country. So I knew that we weren't going to be special, that we had to be on our game as a department to make sure that this didn't get out of hand. And lo and behold, it got out of hand. And there was no control to this thing. This was like you said earlier, dynamite fuse. That thing blew up. It blew up. And there was no structure. There was no leadership. It just seemed like it was free reign for criminal behavior. There was looting, arson, vandalism, assaults, people shooting, probably everything you can imagine going on in downtown. One group of SWAT guys were going one way. One group of SWAT guys were going another way. One group of officers were going this way. No direction by the department on how to handle this. And then dealing with everything I was dealing with, I really got upset. And things started to go in my mind about, are we failing now as a profession? Are we now allowing criminality to happen because we want to keep our jobs and we don't want to make the right or wrong move? And I got pissed. I was mad. I was mad at the department. I was mad at our command staff for the lack of leadership and direction during this time. And I ultimately, and I know I needed a break. I needed my mind. My mind was just going through too much, man.
Can you tell the listener where your mind's at? I mean, and you and I talked, and I want Gabe to jump in. Gabe, you're a sounding board, right? Did you talk to Bryan during this?
So not initially. The night of the riots, I was working too, but nowhere near the extent Bryan was at. I was actually in Vice, and we just before the riots kicked off. Remember that they had the protest in front of headquarters.
Yeah.
Before the riots went out, and so we actually couldn't leave the building to either go do work or participate in helping out other officers. And so we were pretty much we had to stay in. There's nowhere we could have gone. And so once the night had finished, where everything was in downtown, we had confirmed that they didn't need our assistance because we were undercover. We went home eventually. And it wasn't, I think, until the next day. We were at a friend's house at a pool party.
No, I wasn't.
For a couple days.
It was a couple days after that.
So I had no idea what he had gone through, right? I know he had the hostage rescue incident. I had no idea it affected him that way. And then fast forward, we're a couple days into going to a friend's house for a pool party. And we were talking, and he had mentioned he wanted to leave the department. Like he had made his mind, he was done. And it hit me pretty hard, and I was like, yeah, no, you're not doing that. You're not doing that. Because now I realize there's issues, right? Like I can see something's wrong with him, right? To me, that was an irrational decision. And so, you know, we're talking, and I'm like, hey, you know, I'm trying to give him options. Like, hey, you know people, let's figure out, you need a break. I said, hey, you take off. I was like, we need to call your supervision. You got to be honest with them. Take off. Get a week out. Get a 2 out. I don't care what's going on right now with DPD. You need to take care of you. And I know you did.
Yeah.
Eventually you did. You were able to get your week off or 2. And then it was deciding, like, and talking to you more, going, okay, I think you need out for a little bit from SWAT.
Yeah, I was pissed, and my mind during those riots, I think it was a combination of things. I think we had the hostage rescue, we had no sleep. I think everything that leads up to the riots, right? The riots itself, the rhetoric coming behind the riots, so much that had been put into this bottle, and you put the cap on, you shake it, and now this bottle's like ready to burst. Like, it's just enough's enough. You know, the years of command staff coming down on us, or the anti-police rhetoric, the Amber Geiger trial, so much, 7/7, right? And then these critical incidences happening days before the riot, not having enough time to kind of just process what the fuck just happened, and why, you know, in my mind, like, why did we fail, right? That was my biggest thing. How did we fail? And then going into this situation at the riots, where I'm like, okay, well, let's handle this. Let's make sure that we can do our jobs. And in my opinion, we didn't do our jobs. The city, downtown was destroyed, whether we want to admit it or not. We didn't do anything. Yeah, I deployed a ton of gas, but okay. So we just moved the crowd from one spot to another and allowed them to do what they did. We allowed it. And you can tell this stuff was messed up, because even the bridge incident, nobody was on the same page. Nobody wanted to make decisions out there. Nobody wanted to get on the same page. And everybody's worried about their job. And I'm sitting here thinking, like, well, where did our profession go wrong? Where did we go wrong? This wasn't the job that I signed up to do. I swore an oath to protect people and to protect their constitutional rights, and we're not doing that. We're more worried about political persecutions than anything else. And I'm not about that. You know, I'm like, my dream job, my career, my life is being trashed right now. And I'm going through this shit with the hostage stuff. And I'm like, well, screw this. I'm not going to, you're not going to catch me off guard. I'm not going to grab the bull by the horn and then make a mistake and then be set an example during the riots, because that's what they're going to do. That's what they did.
Did you feel, being self-aware, we're becoming self-aware, did you feel that if you remained in that position, that something, that a mistake could be made? Yes,
and I was worried about that. You know, like Gabe said, at some point I realized, like, I was so mad. And I had gone up to my sergeant at the time, Transu, and I said, Sarge, I need to take a break. Like, I just can't think straight right now. And I don't want to make a mistake that's going to ruin me, you, these guys in the department. Like, I'm not going to be that guy. I've got a family at home, and that's what I care about, my family. So, and he understood. He didn't give me any slack about it. Gave me some days off to think, and I did. I mean, I reached out immediately to my therapist that I've been seeing for many, many years, and told her I needed to talk. And I reached out to my father, who, you know, the retired police officer, and he gave me some good advice. You know, just don't make rash decisions. You're basing your decisions on anger right now, and you're not thinking logically. You're thinking out of emotion. So chill out. And so I took him for his word, because he's been involved in critical incidences. He's been shot at. and he almost made rash decisions. He almost left his department and left his family over it. So I took his advice, took some days off, and did a lot of soul searching. And ultimately, the decision I made was to take care of myself and my family and leave SWAT and get my mind, my body right to where, and I think for some in this career, if we're in the middle, we shift out of that middle line, and it somehow or some way you just need to kind of get back. And I felt like getting away from the constant exposure to incidents that way, the critical incidences, the craziness, was to get out of SWAT. And that was probably the hardest decision I had to make.
What was the hardest about that? Make the decision?
Well, several. I mean, one, those guys are my family. Like, till this day, I just recently went to a SWAT training with the North Central Patrol guys, and when I get in there, it's like I light up, they light up, we're just hugging, high-fiving each other, candy's here,
It's really difficult to explain the relationship you have in a small group like that. And I know we've all worked in small groups, and you guys have similar experiences with it. But with SWAT, you spend more time with them than anybody else in your life. And you spend multiple years there.
Yeah.
And when, to leave the way you did, it didn't just affect you. It affected everybody that was there, whether they're willing to admit it or not. But that's just one breakup for them. And it's like 30 to 40 breakups. We discussed it. I mean, it's basically heartbreak. And you talked about being homesick before.
Yeah.
You miss those guys.
Yes.
And nobody leaves in that manner. Like, nobody's ever done it before where they've been there for a couple of years, or if they promote, that's a little bit different because they're moving on and there's something going on. But to just leave is extremely difficult. When I left, I had some issues also, and I didn't realize it until just recently. And I think that might be what it is that you miss those guys, and it takes you 2 or 3 years to realize what's actually going on.
Yeah. And
I wasn't right after I left. I was frustrated with a lot of stuff. Mentally, I wasn't well. Was it similar for you?
Yeah. I mean, so for me, it's like, this is everything that I've worked for, right? This is everything that I've put in for, was for me to go to SWAT. And some of me, or a lot of me, was identified by that, right? Like, I had finally been to get to this position of being a SWAT operator and being good at my job and creating the family that I did in SWAT, and then ultimately having to make the decision to leave to better myself from this. And now I'm not going to see my guys. Now I'm not that SWAT operator anymore. Now what defines me, right? And a lot of things change, right? I soon realized that my family defines who who I am, and not this job. And but still, it's hurtful because and like Sarge said, it's hard to explain that type of relationship you build. But you go to war with these guys. You're the one going into the structure, balls to the wall, ready to take bullets for each other and protect each other or die for each other. I mean, this is what you do on a daily basis over there, right? So, leaving there, it was so hard to make that decision. And a lot of me was fighting against that, saying, just fuck your mind, fuck it, just go for it. And, we'll cross that bridge when we get there if we make a mistake. And I told myself, I can't do that. I can't do that to myself. I can't do that to my family. I've never been that angry before in my life to where it's affected me at home. And that's when I said, I got to get out, and I had to do right by myself and my kids.
And I applaud that. I mean, the self-awareness, number one, and then actually being able to follow through with that decision. I think if you talk to anybody, a lot of the guys have wanted to leave, but they can't. Mm-hmm. I'm telling you, it's super hard to leave on your own accord.
It sucks. I mean, absolutely sucks to say I'm out.
Yeah.
From that. But you fast forward a little bit, and obviously to this day, I miss it. I'm not going to lie. I miss those guys. Again, being in training the other day with them, it was fun, being back there training, doing all the stuff they do. But, when you look at it, maybe, I got to realize that this isn't my plan. This is God's plan, right? And look where I'm at today. Now I'm a sergeant, and that's what he wanted for me. And what's true about that is that a lot of what happened during the riots and Chief Garcia made me want to promote. I was kind of like Gabe after the riots. I had no intent of promoting. I was just going to do my time low key and I was an auto theft detective. I was just going to do my time, retire, and move to whatever part of the life, whatever life had in store for me. And then Chief Garcia shows up, and through what he says and his policies and everything he's done, I believe in him. And I think for most of us, and you can see it in the morale of this department, it sparked a new flame. And I thought to myself, it's not the bars or the stars that they have here that makes them a leader. It truly, you can tell who's a leader and who can steer the ship. And he's doing that, right? And I realized, like, that's what I need to do. I need to help make sure that this department doesn't go back to what we saw during the 2020 riots, and to make sure that the next generation coming up feels like they have the leadership that we're getting right now with Chief Garcia.
Gabe, you see that firsthand, right? So you see the leader that we don't see. You see the leader behind the scenes, right?
Yep.
What's your takeaway from being, and how does that affect you with your leadership skills, having that influence? We see a certain portion in front of the camera or in certain meetings, but you see the real guy and you see the real leadership qualities.
Yeah, no, I get that a lot. Like, you'd be surprised. Most people just, when I go around with him, they realize I'm his assistant, and so they'll just kind of bypass me, which is totally great, right? I'm in the shadows. But then a lot of cops will ask me, because I had no intentions of promoting until just recently, just like Bryan said. And my first assignment as a lieutenant is not just any chief of police. It's Chief Eddie Garcia, and not even Texas known. He's nationally known, right? And it's having a front row seat to greatness. I mean, the motivation, the passion, the genuine that he has is second to none. Like, I've never seen it, right? And I've worked for great guys and great gals, right? We've all known them. We all know the names. Some have retired, but the flavor that he brings to this police department, and the shocking part is, how did nobody know who he was in San Jose, right? He gets to Dallas, because San Jose is not a small department, and he comes to Dallas and he's on the forefront, and he is just grinding. We call it grinding away, right? Every day is a Monday except for Friday for us, right? And really for him, right? It's not my job. I'm there to take care of him, but it's refreshing.
It's remarkable, really, when you think about the fact that he doesn't need a job. Like, he did his time. He has a full retirement. He does this because he cares about it, and you can tell that he cares about it. And that's one of the things that I think everybody appreciates. And you mentioned it. He's like breathing life back into this. It's like a football team that gets a new coach and they go on a win streak.
Right.
That's how a lot of people feel about Chief Garcia.
Yeah, no, and we go to a lot. Obviously, we go to a lot of events and community events and business events and nonprofit events, and some of the speeches he gives are repetitive, but what's funny is it never gets old. And it's always passionate and genuine. And it's so cool. Like, again, a lieutenant, newly promoted, and you're working under the best chief of police that this entire country has seen. And I get that front row seat, and I don't take advantage of that. No, it's amazing. And it's hard to explain because you guys only see what's on TV, and then I get, oh, man, that was great. And I'm like, it was great, but that's like not even half of what I get to experience on a daily basis.
And that kind of leadership and that kind of just genuine character can be infectious.
Oh, it is.
Yeah, and that's what creates morale, better morale.
Yeah,
in an
and you can
apartment.
tell when he's been in front of the Senate committee or the House committee over in D.C., and when they're asking him what he's doing specifically to lower crime, he doesn't take credit.
Right.
He's giving credit to the men and women of this department.
Yeah.
And that just shows you the type of person he is, right? The type of leader he is.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, like he says, it's addicting. Like, you want to be part of that.
Yeah, he's just a role model, right?
Right.
You want, like, you looked at the role model as your father,
Right. Right.
And then now you have we have a new role model, and
Yeah.
like I said, Gabe, you have a front row seat to pure leadership and qualities. And there's something, and like with any leader, you're going to take great things, good things, and some things that's not my style, but that's
Sure.
part of it. But you have a peek behind the curtain of great leadership and great mission, right?
Yeah.
Having a great mission and vision for a entire city, right?
Yeah,
absolutely.
I mean, if I was prepared, I'd write down I've been there 4 months. I can write down what accomplishments he has done in probably 3 pages, right, or more. And you look at when I kind of relate to Bryan when he got to SWAT. I'm going, okay, this is admin job. I got this, right? It's no biggie. But he's not and he'll say it. He's not in the office chief, right? His calendars are always booked. He's going out to the communities. He's going out on ride-alongs. We just went to a SWAT training that he wanted to do. And we're just constantly on the move. And it's not just because he wants to stay busy. He's making a difference. If there's an issue, he wants to find out. And he wants to hear from the community. And he does it genuinely. And that's what's crazy about it all is it's not just a listening session. Hey, Chief Garcia's here. Here's a listening session. Chief Garcia's here. And he listens and responds to it. I mean, he genuinely does it. So when I got there, I'm like, yeah, I got this. And then within 2 weeks, I thought I was in over my head. I really did. I was like, oh my God, he's going not even where I'm close to being at, right? And just, here in the last month or two, do I feel like at least I have a tempo of who he is and what his work life is and his mission and his motivation. And there are times I still feel like, man, I'm nowhere near that. And I'm not. I mean, he's just a different breed. But it was funny when you mentioned it because I felt the same way. And it's the first time I ever felt that way in my career was like, oh, I need to catch up to this guy. But it's fantastic and you can't take that away. And I mean, there's not much to say. It's different. And every day is different. I mean, it's the common sense, right? I mean, think about it. He's got city leadership in agreeance, right? It's all focused on public safety. We just passed a budget where it was primarily focused on public safety, where everyone is city manager, assistant city manager, mayor, council is now in support of public safety, and they're behind him, not just 100 but 200%. I mean, we've never seen that tide
unity.
turn.
It's the message.
Yeah.
The message of it is much different from 2 years ago to what it is today, and the results from that message they're evident, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So you guys both, I think most of us in here kind of look up to him and we take advice from him as a senior person. What advice would you guys give individually to younger officers?
Well, I'll start. I mean, my experiences are obviously, if we listen to this podcast, are a lot different than Bryan's. But my advice is tides turn and we have to adapt. Know who you are and be honest with yourself. Love this job. Because for the most part, a lot of us, this was a calling. This wasn't a job. This was a calling. And so know who you are and adapt to the changes, right? And not adapt where you're complicit in rhetoric or anything like that. But, we talked about body cams. We talked about different things that happen throughout just in a very small time of our careers, right? And you shouldn't let the outside noise influence who you are as a person. You shouldn't. And Bryan's done actually, I know you went through your stuff and you're still probably battling with some issues, maybe still today or not, but you've redefined yourself.
Yeah.
Right. And that's what we're talking about, is redefine yourself if you have to, but don't let the outside noise influence you. We all know Chief Garcia won't be here forever, and the tide can turn tomorrow when he decides to make that move. But I have now in 15 years laid out my career path, even though I don't think 5 years down the road. I have laid out my career path and know what makes Gabriel happy, right? And to keep doing me, to make myself happy, my family happy, and to continue my career path until I retire at 90 years old.
Man, that's great advice. Bryan, I hate to be you, but you're up next to follow that.
You got to follow that.
All right.
He wants to be like Maverick.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's what I'm going to be like, Tom Cruise and Maverick.
Just plagiarize his answer. Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Gabe's right. Gabe's 100% right. This career, this calling, do it because you love it. And that's why I ultimately didn't make the choice to leave this department, because I still believe in this career. I still believe in its calling. And I think that, again, I'll give kudos to Chief Garcia, because he made a lot of people realize, like, hey, it is fun to be a cop, and there is a reason to be a cop, and the calling is still there. But don't identify so much into what you do, and take care of yourself and your family, because that's the most important. When you leave this job, like Joe used to say, 2 days later nobody's going to remember who you are, and doesn't mean not to put 110% into it, but don't identify so much as letting this job take over who you are because you think you're setting a legacy for somebody. And take care of yourself, take care of your mind, take care of your body, and take care of your family.
All right, next topic is regrets. Gabe, any regrets?
No regrets.
No regrets.
No regrets.
I don't really have a lot of regrets. Again, I take that to my personality, right? I didn't plan and really set goals for myself. I knew once I started here back in 2007, man, I fell in love with the $10,000 signing bonus, the $40,000 or $42,000 a year. Thought I was rich, and I can genuinely say that my career experience has been blessed and just continuing to grow. If I was going to make a regret, the only regret I would make is that I didn't take the first senior corporal test, which wasn't a regret because I'm here now, right? Look at me now, and now I got the front. We talk about that. I got the front row seat again to the best chief in this country, and I'm learning so much just from that. I'm not working for a major or a deputy chief. I'm working for the chief of police of this department. So I hate saying that there are regrets. Because I love the job and I give it everything I got. So I'm just going to leave it at that.
I'm just going to say one more thing about what we would say to younger officers.
Go ahead and just ruin the whole segment. Go ahead.
Sorry, but it just reminded me of something. Don't shit on your department. I know we're not perfect. No department is. But you work here. This place gave you the opportunity to become who you wanted to become. And yes, could things be better? Absolutely. But ultimately, this place gave you a job, and this place gave you your life goal. So
it's a sum of the parts, yeah.
Yeah. Don't shit on your department that you work for, even though obviously changes can be made, but still. Regrets. I have one regret for sure. I wish I would have trained as an FTO. When I promoted to senior corporal, I was fortunate enough to, back then you could stay in your specialized unit, so I stayed in CRT. But now being a sergeant, I wish I'd had that first step into being a supervisor, which is field training, and having that experience, because I do love training. SWAT gave us that opportunity to put on classes and train people, and I do love that part of the job as well. But that mentoring type thing, I wish I'd had that earlier on in my career.
I know you're not super planny, but what are your goals from here?
Well, I mean, my number one goal is to ride it out with Chief Garcia as long as he's here, right? You know, my being here for 4 months under his leadership is my vision is very clear, which is to make sure that he gets whatever he needs and he succeeds, right? So that's my number one goal, is to make sure that he does succeed, and he's got it. But you know, that's my number one goal. After that, I don't have any, man. I'm sorry to disappoint you.
Just let it be, man.
Yeah, I sound like the guy from Colorado, right, in Denver, but I don't have any. You know, it's one of those that I've never been disappointed where I'm at, never, and I'm happy to be here. If I'm still the administrative lieutenant when the new chief comes here, and they, you know, he or she wants me to be their administrative lieutenant, they want to promote me, transfer me, whatever it is, I'm just happy-go-lucky, man, and that's my goal. But my ultimate goal is to make sure I'm there for him as long as he needs me. And then after that, wherever life takes me, man.
Bryan.
So ultimate goal in the department, I probably take the next lieutenant
Chief
test.
of police.
No, not chief of police. Probably take the next lieutenant test, just because I know how it is now to study and go hard and do well. But ultimately is to make sure that the next generation of officers have good leadership and good guidance. And that, look, Chief Garcia is doing an amazing job. And I'm not saying as a lieutenant or anything that I'm going to be or am is going to. I just want to continue what he's doing, because I think that that's what's good for this department and this city. And outside this department, my goal is to be a better husband and a better father to my kids, you know, and enjoy life with them.
Both of y'all, your family is super important, Joe.
Yeah,
absolutely, man.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that is most. Y'all growing up being so tight as, you know, twins,
Right.
leaning on each other. Now you're there for your family, right? They lean on each other, and Gabe, I'm glad that you were there when Bryan needed you, and to lean when he was going through his troubles, and you know, Bryan probably doesn't know this. He's going to know now that you reached out to me to reach out to Bryan.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you know, because he needed it.
Yeah.
He needed it. And once you told me, I was concerned, and I'm proud of you.
Thank
I'm
you.
proud of both of you for what you're doing. I'm in the new wellness unit now, and I'm seeing like Gabe here sees a lot behind the curtain with Chief Garcia and what goes on. I'm seeing a peek behind the curtain of the wellness of officers, and also the where we could be a lot better, and we need to be there for each other, just like y'all were, and pick each other up, because there are some struggling people, and this job will tear you down, and if you don't help yourself and you don't reach out to other people to help you, reach out to some of these, you don't have to, leaders, right?
Yep.
You know who they are. There's people that genuinely care.
Yep.
Yeah.
You need to find that.
Yep. Absolutely.
Guys, I want to have one final question for both of you.
Yeah.
Bryan, I'm really I would you like to a redo on regrets and answering? Maybe you would have read that speech therapist
Yeah.
a little better.
Thought you were going to be serious there for a second. I was like, here we go.
He set that up so nice.
No. Guys, I want y'all to know that I love y'all to death, and I'm so happy to see y'all grow it. You know, and Bryan, I'm kind of looking at you where you're at now, and the changes, the different iterations of Bryan Candelaria from whenever I first got that
Voicemail.
douchey email to watching you on the CRT grow, to you actually saying that you got something from my silly little courtroom class, into now you being self-aware and recognizing you are not in a good place in mind and body and SWAT, right? And now you wanting to grow.
Yeah.
Because I didn't see that in you early on, right? In your career. I didn't think you would be a sergeant. I didn't think you would want to lead, but now seeing you having a thirst to know that you can influence from a supervisory level, that makes me proud. That makes me proud to know you and be your friend. And Gabe, you're generally, man, you're a great human being. and I'm honored to know you, and I'm glad that people like you are in leadership roles. I just want you to know that.
Thank you.
Appreciate that.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the Candelarias. I tell you guys, I'm your triplet all the time, just a little bit taller.
Yeah,
Right.
a little bit.
But no,
Same hairdo.
Yeah, same here, dude.
It looks good on him.
Yeah.
I appreciate you guys. I really do. I'm glad you're here. I'm gled you're part of this department, and I really appreciate the fact that you guys do what you do.
Thank you. Yeah,
Really
you guys
appreciate
too, man.
Yeah, Joe, I love you, man, and Sarge. I call you Sarge because that's what you are to me. But no, I love you too, man.
Well, I think this is a perfect way to wrap it up. This is our longest episode, but you got two. Yeah, this is our longest episode.
Oh wow!
And the listeners are going to be, I think they're going to enjoy it. We got a lot of laughs. This is a lot different episode.
Right.
Yeah.
But I think that there's so many layers to this.
There's two of us.
There's two. There's two for the price of one.
Right.
And there's just so many layers and so many different career paths from Apollo and Artemis, right?
Yeah.
And so many differences. We had to pull back those layers of each individual to create this episode. I hope your family, your friends, your coworkers, and the people over you and underneath you in rank hear this and understand the characters that y'all are. Thank y'all for your service. Thank you for coming on here.
Thank you, brother.
guys.
Thank you, guys.
Love you.
Hey brother, hey sister, I'll never give up on you. Hey Mrs., hey mister, I'll see this all the way through. No matter how far the sun and the moon, I'll never give up on you. Down when you're lonely, I'll pull you up. Life leaves you heavy when the going gets tough. I'll be your shoulder, together we'll run. Up from the bottom, yeah, we'll rise above. Hey brother, hey sister, I'll never give up on you. Hey Mrs., hey mister, I'll see this all the way through. No matter how far the sun and the moon, I'll never give up on you. I'll never give up on you. Hey brother, hey sister, I'll never give up on you. Hey Mrs., hey mister, I'll see this all the way through. No matter how far for the gold and the blue, I'll never give up on you.